Hey everybody, this is the Stuff I Heard podcast, and I'm your host Josh Beek, and this is a drinking podcast. So if you're drinking, go ahead and crack one open now. We got Ian, Mike, and Danny here. Want to say hi, guys?
Hey, I'm Ian.
Hey, I'm Mike.
I'm Dan.
And so we're enjoying this time together as an opportunity for us to have a conversation with people who don't normally talk to. And during the quarantine that we have going on, I wanted to talk to these guys specifically. It's kind of weird because Ian is marrying into the family in a weird way. I don't know if he's really excited about it, but he's marrying into the family. Danny just happens to be his future father-in-law, and Ian is also a police officer up north, and Mike also works with him. And I wanted to talk to them about the challenges that they're having right now during the coronavirus and during all of this craziness that's going on with everybody's health concerns. But also, how do you handle all this going on with doing your job and, trying to help out people who are, maybe in need, or also who may be perpetrators or such like that. And, what are the steps that you're taking to keep yourself safe? What are you, what are you seeing?
First off, perpetrator. Very underused word.
Yeah. Alleged.
The lesser known perp.
That's some 1980s LA stuff. I love that.
Alleged.
The perp. So like for me, I'm a sergeant and I work on our city's east side. So when we shut down like March 15th and this became like a big thing, for us it was attaining cleaning supplies from like the city. We were provided with one bottle of bleach water and one rag for, like, my shift has 27 cars and then night shift has 19, so we're cleaning 27 plus 19 cars with one bottle of bleach water and one rag.
Wow. Oh geez.
and that
Tight budget.
Yeah, that comes down to lack of planning, because I think we can all agree none of us was prepared to make that decision.
Oh, absolutely.
So that was our biggest challenge in the beginning, and then for us it then became about the fear of it, because there's still people that commit crimes, there's still people that need to go to jail.
Yeah.
But everyone wants to be, I don't want to touch that dude, I don't want to be within 6 feet of that guy. When you still have a job to do, you still got to go grab that dude and you still got to go to jail. It just is what it is.
So to me, like, I work in the food distribution business right now, and for me, I feel like I'm healthy, I'm vibrant. I'm like, whatever, I can do this as long as I don't touch my face and I wash my hands. I'm okay.
Right.
Don't get near anybody who's coughing, obviously, but it's like you still got a job to do, so it's like, go forward and do the job. I mean, what are you going to do? But sit around and go, I can't do it. It's like, no, people still have to get work done. So I'm sure you're kind of faced with the same obstacles.
The wild thing for us was, like, say, all of us that watch the news and pay attention to everything, we followed those rules. We stopped going out. We wore masks. We washed our hands. We wore gloves. We stayed away from people. Well, like, where I work in a very urban environment, that didn't stop our day-to-day crime rate. Like,
right.
We still have our homicides. We still have shootings, burglaries, B&Es. Everything is still occurring. Nothing changed except for once you left work, then you went home and social distance.
Yeah.
While at work, no one was doing that. Like, we still had like, if there was a party of 100 people the week before we shut down, there was a party of 100 people the week after. It never changed a thing.
Well, I would imagine that with the implementation of everybody wearing masks, there's also the included challenge of people robbing places wearing masks, and you go, I don't know, he looked like this with a mask, and you're like, how am I supposed to find that guy? I mean, geez, are you kidding me?
My mom made the funniest comment when this all started. She was in the bank and someone walked in with a surgical mask on. She was like, oh shit, we're getting robbed. And I was like, well, all right. That's the world we're going to be in for the next 8 months, apparently.
That's crazy. I mean, you hear about stuff in like Hong Kong where they had the implementation of their surveillance cameras everywhere where, okay, so this is a little weird to sound like, but in Hong Kong, let's face it, everybody kind of looks the same. I mean, I know that's a big racial issue and a big stereotypical issue, but they're not watching my show. Let's face it. I mean, if I'm gonna offend a group of people, I can offend the people from Hong Kong, and they're like, who is Joshua Peak? I don't know who he is. But anyway,
I'll take my chance.
That was a big stretch. So anyway, let's say they look similar, okay? And if you're wearing a mask anyway because they live near China and they're already doing that because they're worried about regular viruses going on, and they're saying that this surveillance is infringing upon their civilian rights, and they're taking down towers that are watching them, I'm thinking, what level of security is watching their eyes that closely that they can pick up, oh, this is, so-and-so from this area? I mean, to the point that they're willing to overthrow their government in a sort of a civil coup. I mean, You know, and how timely is it that this virus, oh no, it unleashed
Very
as this is
timely.
going on?
I will say, I thought Hong Kong and China were on their way to
I did too.
an overthrowing of the government when it came to their voting and the not supporting of their socialist
Yeah.
leader.
And with this whole thing, you know, with supposedly Kim Jong-un died, but maybe not died.
Yeah.
And now
Yeah,
people
but
are
you seen his
saying,
body double that they
Yeah,
have out there.
now
That
they're
guy,
saying they're
it's
taking
not
a
even
body
close,
double.
man. They didn't even try.
right, this guy looks nothing like the other guy.
No.
I'm like, his body type is similar, but his face is different. I
Right.
mean, holy cow, this is like that 1990s movie Dave, where they had some guy that was like an impersonator, like, hey Dave, can you be the president? He's like, yeah, sure, why not? You know, yeah, this is kind of what this looks like, you know, but I love the memes on Facebook of the Weekend at Bernie's where they're holding the guy up and he's got his glasses on and he's just like,
I probably saw the funniest tweet. They said Kim Jong-un pretending to die to see the crowd's reaction is the same as, you know, the girlfriend not getting enough attention, so she threatens to break up with the boyfriend. That's
Yeah.
pretty much exactly what that
it's
was.
exactly what
That's
it
what
is.
somebody was kind of portraying all this like COVID-19 and, you know, as the stuff is kind of, I wouldn't say dying down, but it's kind of, you know, people are, I don't know, getting used to it at this point. And then all of a sudden you hear about a murder wasp. I'm like, what the crap?
Hey,
It sounds like a
yeah.
episode off
Oh,
the Hunger Games.
Not only that, but they unleashed like stuff in the Pentagon saying, "Oh yeah, and we're also following UFOs."
Yeah.
It's like,
How about that?
what?
That didn't even move the needle. They
No.
literally admitted, the DOD admitted that they've had videos of UFOs for years.
Yeah,
And they were like, hey, by the way, it's Tuesday, UFOs exist. And
Yeah.
and everyone was like,
yeah.
hey man, this COVID-19 shit is insane.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you got Joe Rogan interviewing Commander Fravor where he's like,
Yeah.
"Oh yeah, I totally tracked this object. I don't know what it is." He's not a UFO guy, but he's like, "This is the footage," and they finally unleashed it to the public, and yet still the Pentagon was like, "No, I don't know what you're talking about."
Right.
And then they choose like, or like you said, a random Tuesday.
It's
They're
like,
like,
hey,
"Oh
Tuesday.
yeah, by the way, we're actually tracking these unidentified objects. We don't know what they are."
Yeah.
So they-
And nobody was phased.
They're literally defying the laws of physics
Yeah.
as we know them. They're flying faster than we could ever imagine.
Stopping on a
Oh,
dime,
that's it.
taking off to 20,000 feet,
Yeah.
Hey,
dropping
man.
to sea level,
That
going
was-
under the ocean. You're like, what? And nobody was like, yeah, okay, there's aliens. No, nobody.
Yeah.
It's interesting though. I was just telling them earlier. My fiance had sent me a video of a doctor who had pretty much said the government's withholding, you know, the cure to this. You know, they know what's going on. And then she sent me the video about, you know, at 2:00 yesterday, and at about 6:00 yesterday, I tried to watch it. Completely unavailable. You know, you can't.
That's crazy.
You know, it's,
Yeah.
you know, it's
Well,
scary censorship. That
And yeah, I saw today there was a thing on YouTube. It said it's weird, or I don't know if it's YouTube or Facebook, maybe Facebook. They said it was weird that you can have someone. What was the statement? You can have someone claim that there's aliens and nobody says a thing, but you can have a doctor want to talk on YouTube about a cure or a possible way to get around this, and YouTube scrapes it from the internet. It's like,
Yeah.
what? You know, I have a friend that works down in Albany, Georgia, which is like the number 4 mortality rate in the world for coronavirus, and he works in infectious disease. And I've done a few podcasts with him where he's talked about the challenges they've had in that area and how, you know, people are just oblivious. They'll just go out in public with no throw caution to the wind. And I feel sort of guilty for that here in Florence because, like I said, I feel vibrant. I feel okay.
Mhm.
I'm going out. I'm doing my job. I'm trying not to touch my face. But also, I could be asymptomatic and just giving it to everybody, not knowing. I mean, that's a real possibility. And that's what worries me is I go, am I the jerk? Am I the guy that's giving it to
Right,
everybody?
right.
Am I healthy in the fact that I'm just okay? You know, you
Like-
hear about like O positive blood. Apparently, you're supposed to be. You could have it but not get symptoms. But
Right.
if you have like A type blood, then you're more possible to get it. And I'm going, okay, well I'm O positive. My wife's A. I could be the carrier and she ends up dying because I'm an idiot.
Like for me, I am due for one respiratory infection a year. It's normally either in the spring or the fall. And it was January, the end of January, I had a fever and I never have a fever. I had a respiratory infection and a sinus infection and a fever all at the same time. I was negative for all my flu tests and I felt awful. And
Yeah.
it was like the worst cough, I couldn't get rid of it. So in my opinion, I thought I had every symptom that they're telling you to watch out
Yeah.
for in January. And I'm very, I get respiratory infections, but I've never had a fever with it. And then I had one, and I was like, ooh, this is suspicious.
I had a cough from November through December.
Yeah.
No fever. Felt kind of crappy, but no fever. but just a persistent cough all November, December, and I've been doing this damn podcast 2 times a week, and I keep apologizing as I'm doing the podcast. I have a
Right.
cough, and I go, I'm sorry, I'm not running a fever, I'm not sick, but I think back and I go, did I have it?
Yeah.
Because then you hear about them talking about maybe this came to America way before they
So
thought.
that's what I'm interested to see, because I don't believe everything I read on the internet, of course.
Oh no, no one
Well,
should.
why would you ever believe that? Unless you're on
Because
this
it's all
podcast.
true.
It's all true.
All of it is.
Yeah.
So I look forward to them tracking back, because
Mhm.
they said our first, like, Ohio had one, some kids came back from China to go to Miami, Ohio, and those are two of our first ones. I think that was like in mid-February, but I don't know if they actually tested positive, but they were quarantined because of where they came from. So when they start tracking backwards, I'd be really interested to see who comes out with the information, oh no, we were right, we didn't have any cases till the end of February. Or do they say, well, this is strange, because I think we had it before.
Yeah. Well, that, and I'm also curious to find out if they're eventually going to say, oh, this definitely came from the place in Wuhan where we were
Yeah.
making viruses, by accident,
Right
it got
outside
out.
the infectious
Yeah.
disease lab.
Yeah, 4 miles from supposedly these wet markets, and I'm like,
Was it a
that's a
bat
little
or
convenient.
A pangolin?
Right. And I'm like, what is a pangolin? I had to Google what a pangolin is. I was like,
Pretty wild looking animal.
Yeah,
man.
it's pretty crazy.
wild looking animal.
So the bat had to take the rap in the beginning for all this, and it's
Yeah.
not even his
Yeah,
fault.
it wasn't his fault. I love the early memes where I think when it first hit, my brother or my stepbrother is a big Batman fan, and he actually works as a radiologist in several different hospitals in the area, on call, going to different ones and helping out. But I sent him a thing right away. It was a meme of the bat signal going up and and Batman sending a signal up of the middle finger. He's like, no. I sent it to him and I go, here you go. He goes, that totally applies. He goes, by the way, I was exposed today. I was like, what? He goes, yeah, great story. I got 3 kids at home. This is really exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Not all jokes hit, man. Not all
No,
jokes are good.
no. But, it is one of those things where everybody is still faced with a job to do, and everybody's still faced with this obstacle of, okay, I'm fine, but my mom has got rheumatoid arthritis, so she's compromised, so I can't be around her. I can't come into contact with people that are around her. We all know somebody in our family that's somehow immunocompromised, whether it's through, cancer, or maybe they had, diabetes or something that went on in their family where they're somehow in danger. So you're like, okay, how do I associate with my family, still do my job, and still provide? I mean, I think Friday I heard a podcast where they were talking about, okay, do we risk 1% of the population for 60% of the population to not go bankrupt?
Yeah, that's where it gets weird, because my mom is high risk. She's had a heart attack and she smokes. And I saw a study that came out of China, which again, grain of salt, obviously, because
Right.
on the internet. But they had a huge population that got the sickest and died. They were upper to mid 50s and they smoked, or they were obese, which obesity affects your lungs and your cardiac system as if you were a smoker. And some of their highest numbers were in men that smoked or were obese. And my mom has smoked and has a heart attack. She's not obese, luckily. So for me, I haven't seen my mom in 2.5 months, probably.
Jeez.
I see her, I buy my dog food from her.
Yeah.
She owns a store, a pet supply store. So literally, I wave to her outside the window. She leaves the food outside for me, and then she'll send me a text afterwards.
Mm.
So when it comes to I feel extra responsible because that's my 1%, obviously. But as an adult with a rational thinking mind, it's hard for me to fight against the argument for herd immunity, because if we're not working towards saving 80-90% of the population, but we're going to sacrifice how much
Yeah.
to save the 1%.
Yeah, I mean, and luckily we've heard about different organizations, different owners of businesses and stuff like that saying, don't worry about rent for the next 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be, we're just going to eat it for right now. Just try and get through this, and then when things get back to normal, we'll go back to normal.
See, there's a key word right there. Normal. I have
is
a feeling
normal?
in the new future, normal is going to be a whole different outlook. I mean, it's going to be a whole new normal.
Yeah.
That's why I keep hearing people say, well, I can't wait for things to get back to normal. Well, I don't know what that new normal is going to look like, because I have a feeling this has changed so many policies in business. policies in your home life, in your personal life, I think you're gonna have a whole different normal.
Well, and also, I'm looking at your Packers shirt. I mean, how's this going to affect sports? I mean, are you going to have
Absolutely.
crowds in sporting events, or is it going to be an uncrowded event? Like we're watching UFC tonight. There's not a crowd at Jacksonville, but they're fighting.
Yeah.
And we commented on the fact that this last fight that we just watched ended, and the guy's like, "Yeah, I won," and he looked around and there's nobody in the crowd, so he didn't play to the crowd. I mean, immediately the guy who lost came up and congratulated him. Hey, man, good job. You beat me. I mean.
Well, I think it's going to be tough because I used to race tough trucks for several years, and I can't imagine going to a stadium or an event where it's. I mean, I do really love to race, so it doesn't matter. I would race, but I think the level of your adrenaline, the level of your competition, is just not the same. You're not playing to a crowd. So I think it's going to be, and the same way for like any sport, whatever it may be. I mean, the crowd, you feed off the crowd.
Yeah.
And if there's nobody there, it's going to be kind of hard to get that, that extra gear that you really need. So it's going to be difficult.
Well, I mean, in 2020 we saw basketball cease. We saw baseball never happen.
Right.
Hockey never kicked off. Football supposedly is going to start next week.
Yeah. We're hoping.
Really? I mean, holy crap!
Baseball in July, they're saying.
Are they gonna split it up where every other seat is in? I mean,
Yeah.
what is going to be the acceptable limit, and is this going to cause another problem? I mean, all those are questions that none of us really know.
No.
But it's one of those that we're all asking each other. I mean, I know that's a question that my wife asks me every day I come home from work. So what do you know? Anything different?
Yeah.
I mean, she's having to work from home, so her information is limited, and so every day
The
I'm
world's
out in
a
the
lot
public.
smaller than what it
Yeah.
used to be. Yeah.
So every day I come over to the public, she's like, "What's new in the world?" And I'm like, I mean, we're figuring it out. That's all I know. I mean, I don't know that anybody has the answers. I mean, luckily, we have technology nowadays where we can communicate through Zoom and through FaceTime and stuff like that. But it's not the same as coming into contact with each other and like hugging each other. And a buddy of mine came through the area today whose grandma passed away, and when he pulled up to visit, he's coming back through here to go to Myrtle Beach. He got out of the vehicle and he's wearing a mask on his face, and I thought, is he going to wave at me? Is he going to come hug me? We always hug, We've been best friends since we were in 9th grade, 10th grade, something like that. And he had the mask on for a second, and then he goes, "God, screw this!" And he pulled the mask on, and he came and hugged me, and I was like, "Of course you're going to hug me. Why would
That's
you?"
the awkward part. Is like even if it's not your best friend, you're walking up to somebody and what you would typically do, you're like, you kind of get that awkward look. You're trying to see who's going to make the first move. What do I do here?
That's like how you figure out who the conspiracy theorist is about this. If someone comes up and gives you a big hug or shakes your hand, they're like,
Shakes your hand.
I don't believe in this one bit.
Yeah. I mean, and not only that, but I mean, this whole thing about not touch your face, I didn't realize how much I touched my face until he said, "Don't touch your face."
That's
Exactly.
the most scary realization, how unaware you are of your natural habits.
Yeah.
Because I wear glasses or contacts. But if I'm wearing my glasses, like if you have an itch on your nose, you're just gonna run your hand right over your eyeball. Oh, good. Possibly disinfecting myself. Like,
Right.
Can I touch a doorknob and use Germex afterwards? Who knows?
Well, that's why I noticed myself. Like I never even paid any attention until all of a sudden now that in the back of your head, every time you reach for your face, you're like, oh man, wait a minute. And
then if you don't touch it, that itch intensifies.
it does. It drives me crazy.
Yeah.
So
Well, I mean, in the Marine Corps, one of the things I used to do was I would teach people how to go in and out of the gas chamber, and of course, as you do this on repetition, the more exposure you get, the more
That
you're
might
like,
be the true cure to.
yeah. I
Let me
mean,
tell
I'm
ya.
thinking about all the shots that I had that were unlicensed, and they're like, no, you're good forever, and I'm like, what? I had 2 kids while I was in the Marine Corps, and when I got them, when I got out and I came home to give them boosters, they were like, no, they're good forever, and I was like, what? They go, they might need a tetanus shot when they turn 40. And I was like, really? And they go, oh yeah, you got experimental crap, you're good. I was like, okay.
They ever give you did you ever get the peanut butter shot when you were in the Marine Corps?
I never heard it called that, but
Oh, it was
explain
just
more.
this something real thick. I don't know what that sounds a little weird. When
All
I say
right.
it's real thick, but it's something.
Was it
you know-
administered by a priest in the dark?
Yeah. Come on, man.
Did
I'm
it
a
say
Catholic.
close your eyes?
It's some kind of shot that goes right in one of your butt cheeks, and it's like a baseball.
Yeah,
In there.
we had
And then you
multiple
just
that you
gotta-
had to rock. We
Yep,
had to
you
sit on
gotta
the floor and
roll
rock back
around
and
it,
forth
roll
on it.
around on it, and
Yeah.
mush it out a little bit.
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, we went down the assembly line of both arms, both butt cheeks, and then you sit on the floor and you have to rock back and forth and move it all out. And then you stand in line and get them again in your arms, and you're like, is this safe? And you're thinking, I don't know, absolutely not. None of this is safe.
Wow.
You're still here today, so.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I got out, they kept saying stuff like, do you want to go down and get a flu shot? And I was like, no, I don't ever want to get another shot again if I have to. But, it wasn't until recently I got another flu shot. I think I went in for a regular appointment. She's like, oh, we're giving a flu shot away. You want one? I thought, I haven't had one in a while. Sure, why not?
Believe
I
it
was
or
like,
not,
why
I've
wouldn't it
never had a flu shot. The only flu shot I ever got when I was a paramedic before I got hired as a policeman, I had the swine flu shot when it was making its rounds. Because I was forced to get it or else I would have been fired. And I can honestly say I have never had the flu. Not one time.
I don't know if I've ever had the flu or not. I've had a lot of shots. And once a year, whenever the seasons are changing and you see those purple flowers in the vine, well, you guys are from up north. There's this purple vine flower down here, wisteria. Every time I see that purple flower, I know immediately I can't breathe for like 2 weeks. And I gotta start taking Alivert and Sudafed, and it's just gonna mess me up. And it's almost like I've been punched in the face. My eyes swell up, and it's like, I wish this stuff would go away.
And that's
as soon as
another
the flower goes
byproduct
away-
of this. This stuff all hit right when pollen
Yes.
season got real thick. So you're like,
Everybody's
if you
coughing a
sneeze,
little bit.
everybody looks at you like you just transmitted the COVID-19 to everybody. And I'm like, dude, it's pollen.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's very uncomfortable when you're around a group of people and one of them goes, sure, you're like,
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like you're the Satan child. or
is this the
something.
moment it happens? Is this the moment? Did I just get it? Oh my God, I'm exposed! Yeah. So, yeah, but that's also, one of those things where you're like, I hope that I'm okay. I hope that all this has been like for nothing.
Yeah.
Did I do all this for nothing, or am I being safe? And of course, every question of it is just like, no, I'm an idiot. Obviously, I mean that's why I joined the Marine Corps. So anyway, moving forward.
You're a hero.
What was the old joke? If you stood in line and they said, "You here to join the Air Force? Well, let me see your ASVAB scores." Oh no, you need to go next door. And you go next door and they go, "Let me see your ASVAB." No, you need to go next door. And then eventually they get to the Navy and they're like, "Can you say your name?" You're like, "Oh," and they go, "You need to go next door." Yeah, I don't know. It is what it is, but whatever. I'm hopeful that all this gets back to normal-ish.
Yeah.
I don't know that movie theaters are ever going to be a thing again. I think that people are getting so used to their big screen TVs at home.
Oh yeah, it seems like that's going away real quick.
I think
It seems like they're having
everybody-
more success just
The
getting it from their home.
on-demand
Though.
streaming.
If
Yeah.
TV's
Because
getting
you're still
bigger,
paying
they're
for it.
going to have to get bigger houses. I can remember in the day looking at a 13-inch TV, and a 13-inch TV. My God, the computer monitors are bigger than that now. And I just delivered one just last week, an 85-inch television. I'm like, my God, why don't you just make a wall? And I see in the future that you're not going to have. They're going to be built right into the wall. You heard it here now first from me. But it's just the technology
What are you
and these
doing,
things.
man? I mean, let's work on it.
Well, I mean,
that could be.
my brother, for a short period of time, he had one that was a projection.
Yep.
Yeah.
That he had just like a thing mounted in the ceiling.
Yeah, and projected right on the wall.
It was beautiful, and I was like, "How did you do that?" I'm amazed by it, but it looked great.
I remember back in the
"This
day,
is awesome."
you'd be able to remember this. I bought my first big screen. I called it the big screen TV, but it actually had a projector built in the back, and it weighed about 3,000 pounds. It felt like. And now you get them, and they're literally weigh next to nothing. And because I can remember I had taken that down to my basement, and I had put it down in there. And I swear to God, if it was coming back out, it was coming in parts. And it did. I smashed it apart in the basement and brought it up part by part.
When I was out of the Marine Corps, I took one of my income tax checks one year and I bought a big screen TV from Best Buy. It was a 55-inch, which at the time was humongous.
Oh, yeah.
And in my tiny 900 square foot house, 2-bedroom house, I had 2 kids. My sons were in one bedroom. I had this in the living room, and basically I had my couch 4 feet away from it. So we could watch movies and play Xbox where it was this close to us. I mean, you could reach your foot out and touch it. I got robbed one day while I was dating my wife just before we got married, and they stole the Xboxes, obviously. and there was fingerprints all over the TV because I'm sure they were like, "How do we get this out of here?"
Yeah.
They couldn't figure out how to get it out of there, but they were just like, "This thing is awesome!" But also, it was too big to like run out of the house with.
Yeah, you're not gonna run down the street.
It was
with them
just
things.
tremendous, yeah. But I mean, nowadays, flat screen TVs, you could just pick it up, put it on your arm, and take off.
It's funny you mentioned that. When I worked before I came to where I'm at now, the going rate for burglaries, they would come in, they would unhook your TV from the wall, and the first thing you had to do, you had to find the first abandoned house, and you'd go in the backyard near the garage. They would stack everything they stole in that garage of an abandoned house, and they would come back later and get it when we weren't chasing after them or anything like that. They'd wait 8-10 hours, come back like they were meant to be there, back up toward that garage, they'd take everything out, they'd throw it in the truck, and they'd be gone.
Wow.
So when we figured that out, we were able to recover all your property, but I mean, it had been sitting in an abandoned.
My wife's
Garage.
dad recently had his trailer broken into down in Roundo, and he knew who the guy was. He lived down the road. He'd been breaking into his house for years. This guy was on drugs. This guy had problems. And he kept reporting to the cops, and they'd arrested him a couple times, but they let him go. And this time when he broke in, he like full methed out, like tore through the back door with an axe. And
An axe?
with an axe. Her dad put up trail cams, and he's got him on video breaking into the house. The only way they could find it out was he had an assailant with him who had visible tattoos that he could track. And he was like, "We know this guy. We've arrested this guy before."
People
They went and got him
forget
and
about
questioned him.
those
He goes,
tattoos.
"Oh yeah, we totally did it." And so and so, and they found the house where there's like 200 TVs where they robbed the entire town, and they were like, "Oh, you were the guys we've been looking for."
I'm not gonna
Cold
say
case.
I'm not gonna
Yeah.
say tattoos or fingerprints, but for the most part,
They pretty much
they
are.
pretty much are.
Yeah.
They're pretty
So-
unique to
Wear a long
individuals,
sleeve
yeah.
shirt, you idiot.
So if you're out there getting the face tattoos, please be doing that because you're making smart life
Oh,
decisions.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I encourage everybody, if you're getting a face tattoo, you're doing the right thing. Just
Yes.
keep going with it. It just makes it easier for you to catch later.
Keep wearing tank tops when you're booting indoors. No one will notice all those beautiful gas station tattoos you have.
Yeah. Well, usually the gas station tattoos and the meth go hand in hand.
Yes, they do. I
So-
will say that.
All the good decisions are happening at the
Right.
same time. Oh, Jesus. It makes me wonder if we're in actually the movie Idiocracy, where we got a wrestling guy's going to eventually be the president, and he's like,
Great movie though. Great.
it's so underrated.
Are you telling me you wouldn't vote for The Rock right now? I
Listen,
might
if The
vote
Rock
for The
ran,
Rock, yeah.
he'd be worth listening to.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
I guarantee
free
he's got
tequila
more
and
brains than
free
than
rock
we've got to
bottoms
work
for
with now.
everyone.
yeah.
Listen here, you jabroni. Vote for me.
If he came out once a week in a shirtless ad, and my wife would vote for him, she'd be like, "I'm voting for the president." I mean, she'd be all in. And listen, I would vote for him too. I'd be like,
Yeah.
yeah.
All you gotta do is promise that Terramana tequila, man. Have you had that?
No, I'm trying. I'm assuming it's sold out.
It's hard to find, but if you can get a taste of it, it's good.
Mm.
Very nice.
I haven't had it yet either.
But
I'm proud of him for coming up with a consumable on top of all the movies and producing and acting and everything else. The key is making a consumable. I heard it once said, was it Adam Carolla said, "Do you want to invent a toilet or toilet paper? Because you're only going to buy one toilet, but you're going to buy toilet paper forever."
yeah.
And he came up with a drink called Mangria that
Right.
he's selling now,
Yeah.
which is sangria and like added vodka.
Yep.
But it's flavored and it's supposedly good. I haven't tried it yet. I can't find it anywhere, but like that is the consumable you want to come up with, which is I guess why all these celebrities are starting to get into the gin business and vodka and tequila and stuff like that. Hey, let's make something people want to drink.
Yeah, George Clooney has a tequila too.
Yeah. Was it Ryan Reynolds has Aviator gin?
Oh, really?
God, there's a bunch of celebrities.
My
Dan
brother
Aykroyd.
is a bartender in Northeast Ohio, and Ryan Reynolds was shooting a movie up there, and he served him his own glass of Aviator.
Yeah.
Just
Wait
I
a
mean,
second.
not only that, but he also like during
James,
his
Really?
I swear.
Ryan Reynolds came into that place.
I'm just saying.
Wow.
he also donated like over $1 million of proceeds to this, to the bartenders fund of them being out of work right now, which is really cool. I mean,
Yeah,
he didn't
that's
have to do
awesome.
that.
Right.
That's really cool of him. The guys from Breaking Bad, Aaron Paul and Bryan Cranston, they own a what is it? I forget what the alcohol is. God, I wish I could remember the name, but they also donated $1 million. I mean, that was
Really?
their thing. Yeah. So I mean, it's cool that if you have a business, you're able to give back. I mean, a lot of companies aren't, but it's really exceptional when they do. I know Miller also gave to like Bartenders Association $1 million. They're like, yeah,
That's what it's funny. I heard some people say, "Well, yeah, these celebrities should give money. They get all kinds of money." I'm like, "Oh, wait a minute. They don't have to give nothing.
They don't have
and
to.
Furthermore, what did you give? You know,
Yeah.
they gave all this money, and you're bashing on them. But did you help anything out?
All I know is I don't need a video of a bunch of celebrities singing to make me feel better. That's
No.
for sure.
No, I thought that was
Just give the
ridiculous.
money.
That was-
Just
that
give
was
the
crazy.
money.
Shut
Yeah.
up and do nothing, or
Yeah.
give the money. That's
Well,
about it.
that's also ego. It's I want you to look at me
Right.
because I'm important.
That was like
And
a
I'm
fucking
mad
church,
or-
man. That was terrible.
Yeah. Now, on the contrary, I do like the ones that the comedians did on YouTube where they raised money for local comedy
Yeah.
people.
That was
and
cool.
They were trying to be funny on Zoom, which is very hard because there's no audience to play off
Was
of.
that the one Kreischer like completely like freaked out when Adam Sandler was
Yeah,
on there?
he said all the wrong movies. He's like, I love your movie Precious Gems. He's like, okay, yeah. Billy Madison was great, or was it Happy Madison? He's like, okay. He goes, you got Netflix? Yeah. Like immediately his friends call him later. He's like, that was awesome. He's like, what are you talking about? He's like, you think he has Netflix? He has a $200 million contract. How they throw that in there? You know.
He's got his friend's password.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, immediately they like stepped up and they're like, okay, so the only way we can really raise money, they gave money of their own first off, but then they also donated their time of, hey, we want to help out people, and then they got on social media and just entertain people to like try to raise money. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, I got nothing in this, I'm giving everything. You know, here's an opportunity to also give. And I like that. I like that, you know, if you're going to do that, you know, first off, put your money where your mouth is, which Whitney Cummings started it off. She's like, I'm putting $5,000 in right now. And of course, $5,000 for her is not a big deal, but it is a big deal. It's $5,000.
That's
Yeah.
$5,000.
Right. Right. I mean, you know, she's got a production company. She's an actor. She's a writer. She's a producer. She does all this stuff. $5,000 is still a lot of money. But to start it off and saying, this is what I'm setting the bar at, you
Right.
guys go from there.
Yeah, that's a big part.
Yeah.
Because then everyone else seems, a little less.
I mean, everybody else was still, I mean, right off the bat, they were all like, I don't know, you know. But then when she says $5,000, even Theo was like, okay, I'll do $5,000 too, whatever.
Theo Vaughn is my boy.
Gang, gang.
If Theo Vaughn somehow listened to this someday, just know, if I could grow a mullet at work, I would, just for him. The Rat King lives. Man, I love Theo.
What's amazing is he always comes up with things that I've heard said as a kid, but the way he says it is funnier than how
I
I've
don't
heard
know
it.
if it's his Louisiana accent or whatever it is, but like he sometimes on his podcast there's Batman Praise God. I'm like, and he says it just so perfectly timed with what someone else is saying. I'm like, that's incredible, man. I could never. It's a one-liner that shouldn't be a one-liner. And I'm still
To me, it's like the gears in a 10-speed. When everybody else is at a 10, he
Yep.
drops it down to a 7, and he delivers a line that's like,
Yep.
holy crap, I did not see that coming.
Do you know much about him at all?
I don't.
Oh
I don't.
man, I saw him. I think it was last year, and from start to finish, I don't even know if he had a set. Honestly, 'cause he played off the crowd so much that his one-liners making fun of people in the crowd were just as funny as his.
That's what I like a
legitimate-
comedian that can like, you know, a lot of them they have predetermined, you know, they got a schedule what they're going to go. But a lot of them, like you said, you know,
Off
that
the cuff.
avenue will go off to the left. And next thing you know, they'll just run with it and still not miss a beat.
Well, and you know, from being a comedian fan and a podcast fan, I've heard a lot of their podcasts where they talk about when you're in the crowd, you just sort of have to be in the moment and you have to read the crowd. And sometimes it's just your ability to adapt. It's just going to make either it be fun or not.
Yeah.
And you want to make it fun for everybody because you want them to come back and you want them to do this again. You know, so you have to read the crowd and you have to play off of them all the time.
I've been to some comedy clubs and you can tell, you know, they got predetermined, you know, schedules and scripts and whatnot. But next thing you know, something happens in the crowd and it just it flips the whole script and a good comedian can take that and just turn that whole thing around. And I've watched a lot of them do that and it's just hilarious. I mean, you can, like, he'll start with somebody in the crowd. Well, that person will jump to somebody else and then he'll just, you know, follow that person, and it's just crazy how they can just think of that stuff right off the hip.
The first time I ever heard Theo Vaughn, he was on Burt Kreischer's podcast, the Burtcast, and he was talking about his origin story. He said his dad was in his 70s when he had him. And his mom is like a hottie, but she married this old guy, obviously for money. But he's like, I grew up with my dad, like being able to barely live, and he goes, obviously comedy came from that, you know.
He had it built right in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all of his stuff is like, I wonder if my dad's alive today.
One of his best jokes was like, yeah, we should take turns holding a mirror under his nose to see if he was dead or not.
Yeah.
And that's like for instance, Austin Blue. You know, he's got that disorder. But instead of taking it and say, oh, woe is me, you know, I mean, he flipped the script on that, and man, he uses that in his comedy, and it's just hilarious.
Yeah.
You know, if you can make fun of yourself and be okay with that, I think that's
also
great.
one of the reasons Burt Kreischer takes his shirt off. He's like, listen, I know I'm fat. Okay, it's funny when the fat guy takes his shirt off.
Yeah.
If I look like a hunk, he'd be like, "This jerk." He's like, "But as long as I look like this, immediately when I take my shirt off, it's like it's a party time. Nobody is feeling threatened. Everybody's like, all right, cool, we're in now." Woo!
One of us.
It just seems like the most, the non-politically correct stuff is what the most successful kind of thing is now, you know?
Yeah.
And I think we've just had such a culture where it's just, everything's PC, PC, PC. Whereas Dave Chappelle came out with his last
Sticks and
one.
Stones,
Where
absolutely.
it was just, everything was completely just
Right.
against the grain. I don't care if you don't like me, if you don't think this is...
Smolier.
Yeah, if you don't think this isn't funny, you're crazy. You know,
Well,
and look, it was Netflix put it on.
And a
you
week
know?
later, Bill Burr came out with Paper Tiger, and he goes,
Oh,
"This is
yeah.
gonna piss you guys off. Let's
Paper-
talk about it."
Paper Tiger was aggressive. I loved him. man.
But
A lot
both
of
of them
comedians,
immediately
yeah.
was like, "Listen, this is not what you want to talk about. This is not politically correct."
But it's what everyone's thinking.
Yes.
That's exactly what people are thinking. They just put
Yeah.
it in funnier terms. That's all
Well,
it is.
and thankfully, podcasts have had that dialogue where
Right,
they've been
right,
able
right.
to talk about the fact of, you know, we're all supposed to be politically correct and skate around the things that we think are funny. No, some of this shit's funny. Let's talk
Right.
about it. And I mean, thank goodness there is that outlet. I mean, I don't know where comedy would be or where we would be, like on a social level, if it wasn't for these guys having a podcast and being able to talk to us on a regular basis and share their
Right.
experiences and say, listen, let's just call bullshit on what it is. I mean, thank goodness.
That's what Tom Segura is. I saw him last year as well, and he's one of my favorites because he's just so sarcastic and dry. Like, I think his comedy's the best. And I guess he made a couple jokes about Louisiana, and they wrote him a bunch of like nasty letters or whatever. So when we went to see him, he was like, "Yeah, so here's what they said to me," and then he continued to roast them for 5 more minutes. He's
Yeah,
like,
on his special.
yeah, he's like,
Yeah.
"This is comedy, dude. Like, if you don't like it, laugh or move on. Turn it
Yeah,
off. Like,
turn it
that's
off.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was in Disgraceful where he's
Yeah,
like,
it's
it's like,
incredible.
yeah, we need to build a wall, but around Louisiana, those dirt people. And then he doubled down in the next special
Yep, that was the
and
best
Ball
part.
Hogs, and he's like, you know what, Arkansas too, screw those guys.
Which, the best part is Theo Vaughn's from Louisiana, and he's like, "You ever been to Mississippi?" They roasted Mississippi for 10 whole minutes.
Yep. But the funniest thing was after the roast and after the whole outrage, then he booked like 8 shows in New
Yeah.
Orleans. And he's like, yeah, I'll play there. And they loved it. They were like, down! Of course, immediately after watching their specials, I immediately sent my friends a message and I was like, you got to watch Ball Hogs. And I just hashtagged it, 9 is a lot. One of my buddies, he texted me back like an hour later, he goes, my wife quit after he said my mother was a whore. And I was like, you got to keep watching. It gets funnier.
When he went straight mom level jokes.
Yeah.
And so Meg and I watched that at home, and we're like, wow, why does all of this sound familiar? Well, we went and saw him. He was testing out all those jokes for the special. So we had already seen the special before without knowing, and I still died. I still laughed the entire time.
I got into this whole thing because of Burt Kreischer. Years ago, I was driving to Charleston on a regular basis, and from here to Charleston, it's about a 2.5-hour drive. And I was falling asleep at the wheel driving because I was just so exhausted all the time. And a friend of mine that I was in the Marine Corps with, he reached out to me and he says, hey, I'm going to send you a link. Watch it. It was Joe Rogan interviewing Burt Kreischer telling the machine story for the first time.
Oh my God.
And they said, you need to start a podcast. And when he said, I don't know, maybe, okay, I found the first podcast that they put up with Tom Segura coming over and saying, just turn the equipment on. And it was terrible, but it was also, Joey Diaz came over to the house. It was Easter weekend, and he gave Burt Kreischer's dad pot popcorn, and his dad's on the popcorn chewing it. He's like, "Dad, don't eat that. That's Joey's popcorn." He goes, "No, buddy, it's okay." He goes, "Dad, that's popcorn." He goes, "No, it's good, buddy. It's all right." And Bert's having a conversation with Joey and his dad. And he's like, "I guess if you're going to go deep, I will too. Give me some popcorn." But I started episode 1 listening to him, and I was like, I came home and I told my wife, I said, "I think I have something that's going to keep me awake."
Yeah.
And from that moment on, I just kept finding everything with Bert in it or Joey. And I was like, I cannot wait to listen to more. Like, my journey down to Charleston just became something I just happened to do. Listening to the podcast became my day. And so those guys kind of populated my enjoyment of my job. Like, my job was just crap I had to do until I get to listen to the podcast again. And I come home and I tell her about it. I was like, I can't wait to listen to this podcast again. So from
Did we
that,
ever listen to anything in the car? Did we ever listen to any podcasts?
Me
or
and you?
anything? Yeah.
No, not too much. 'Cause I was always falling
Yeah,
asleep.
too
but-
busy sleeping.
well, I mean, now there's tons of stuff that can keep you entertained, but also, no matter your interest, whether it's, science or medicine or ancient aliens or whatever, true crime, all this crazy stuff, anything you want to listen to, there's an outlet for it. And so I created this whole crap by listening to Bert one day. Leanne came on there one day, his wife, and in the intro she says, "Anybody ever thought about starting a podcast? There's an app you can download called Anchor." And I thought, that's it. And I literally came home and I downloaded the app once I was Wi-Fi here in the house, and I was like, I think this is all you got to do. And I hit record, and I recorded, and I go, that can't be it. That it's too easy. That's how this whole started. And so here I am 2 years later.
I would say you took it pretty serious.
Yeah, hell of a setup in there. And
I think you took it a little bit deeper.
2 years later, this is episode 224.
Jesus.
I thought we were going to be in the back of a van or something. Like,
I literally sat in the living room about a year
You
ago.
had a good time. Is there candy?
Before any of this furniture was built, this was an exercise room. My wife had a treadmill and an exercise elliptical machine in here. This TV was mounted way up on the wall so she could see while she was working out. And I was sitting in the living room. I told her, I said, "I'm going to turn that room into a podcast room." And she goes, "No, you're not." Here we are, folks. 2 years later.
Pants on that family.
I'm actually relatively impressed that worked out.
Well, it's weird. I had a vision for it, and I was like, I came up with a name, stuff I heard. I was like, it doesn't have to be anything it doesn't have to be factual. It doesn't have to be anything researched. It could just be conversational. Stuff I heard.
Yeah.
Why not?
Stuff I read on the internet once.
It could, yeah. I mean, but also you come into contact with people all the time. You have conversations. You hear stuff in the news. You hear stuff on the radio. You hear stuff on podcasts. You can talk about anything and make it a conversation. Why not? Right?
That's fantastic.
So anyway, that's how this all began. Bert Kreischer's to thank. Leanne Kreischer's actually to thank. But I wanted to get on their Zoom they had last night, and I tried over and over. They allowed 1,000 people to be on his Zoom, and he had his. I couldn't get on.
Wow.
The minute he released the code, I was watching him. He did a thing with a lady that teaches his hot spin class.
Mm-hmm.
She was on one of the first episodes of Two Bears, One Cave when they did the YouTube thing.
2 bears, 1 cave.
He walked into hot spin and she happened to be the instructor. She was on the first episode. She was the hot girl that brought in the drinks. That was her.
Oh.
So anyway, she was on there doing something for heart research, and he did her Instagram live for like an hour. And he goes, "I got to get off here. I got to do my Zoom." And immediately he gave the code, and I tried to log in. Already full.
Wow.
1,000 people that quickly.
Wow.
Man.
I was like, crap. But anyway,
I mean, we got way off track. Do you have any
Sorry.
other- Hey, man, it's your show, man. It's your show, yeah.
I'll steer this thing anywhere.
I mean, we can tell all sorts of weird cop stories, whatever you want to hear, man. If you have questions.
I was gonna say I've been pleasantly surprised because when we're coming up here for a golf trip, and then they told us we're doing this podcast.
Well,
I don't know if I was too enthralled, but I thought
the podcast, actually, the idea for it started at the pool last weekend. Danny and Lori had us over at the pool, and we were sitting around drinking a little bit. Cheers. I think at one point I looked at Danny and went, "I'm out of beer." He was like, he had that look of panic in his eye, like, "I'm sorry." I brought 9. I'm already out. He's like, "That's too bad."
You're going to switch gears now?
We started sitting around talking, and they were mentioning that you were coming down, and it's like, "Oh, Ian's coming down with Mike," and I was like, "Do you think they'd be interested in doing a podcast?" And I was like, "Listen, I'm kind of curious what it would be like to be I mean, you try to always put yourself in other people's shoes. Well, I do anyway. Try to put myself in other people's shoes, and what is that job like when you're faced with this kind of obstacle? And immediately I think about the fact of you always get calls of we got a perpetrator, blah, 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 this is going on. You know, we got a home invasion, we got domestic violence, we got this and that. And immediately my brain went into hyper mode of, okay, we're in quarantine, everybody's stuck inside. I know domestic violence has got to go up immediately.
Yeah.
And that's one of the calls you don't. I got a friend of mine that's in the police force in Greenwood, South Carolina, and he says, listen, that's the one call you don't want. You don't want a domestic call violence because it's like, oh, God, this is going to be just a crap show no matter what happens.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, me and Ian used to work together for what, 2.5 years.
Yeah, almost 30.
We were partners, became best friends. Good time.
That would happen in the academy.
All right.
Yeah.
Either way, we're best friends now. But anyways, so after that,
You didn't know that, but now you are.
Now I'm fully aware.
he had to go and get promoted. Okay, so and then I couldn't find a
big
partner
jerk.
I liked working with. He had to go and better himself.
Guess why the only reason I took the sergeant's test was? Because he took it. He tried to leave me first. I just did better at leaving him.
Yeah, so he got
It's a love
promoted.
affair. Aww.
I couldn't find another partner
Taylor
I
Swift
wanted to
hard
work
hands.
with. I ended up becoming a traffic cop, and for those of you who don't like traffic cops, don't speed. I won't make my money. All right. But anyway, so I'm not allowed to write tickets right now. I have been ordered. You shall not write tickets. So my current job as a police officer is taking temperatures of other police officers. coming
Wow.
in. So I traded in my radar gun for, you know, a laser little thermometer. Mind you, it's a broke thermometer. Everyone that comes in reads 92, 93 degrees. No one cares. I've taken the higher ups temperatures and it says 93 degrees and they go, you know, hey chief, and they go, oh, 93 degrees. Okay, have a good day.
That sounds like the end of the Marine Corps.
It's
That sounds
unbelievable.
exactly like the end of the Marine Corps. Here, use this equipment that was outdated 20 years ago.
Right. Like, so
They
if
can
it
say
spreads.
they used it.
Yeah.
That's all that matters.
Yeah.
The liability has been passed.
Oh, that's crazy. God.
Yeah, the DBs, like for us, you can always tell, ours always have a huge uptick in if we get a huge snowstorm,
Mhm.
because now everyone's stuck inside, or when it's really hot, because now it's really hot and you're stuck inside with no air conditioning. And then currently we've had a ton just because there are some people that are following it. And it's like, let's say like the shift I supervise, I have 26 guys that work for me. That's probably 10 two-man cars and 6 one-man cars. And every two-man car has 2 DVs a day, probably.
Mm.
So you're talking 20 DV calls, and that's one of 5 districts.
Well, and part of the problem of being quarantined at home is you're bored at home,
Right?
and if you drink a little, right now you're probably drinking a lot.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
I am fortunate.
Ohio's liquor sales were up like 45% in 1 month.
Jesus.
Absolutely. I am so blessed and so fortunate. My daughter's already grown up and out of the house. But
Yeah.
these parents having to homeschool,
Yeah.
I think they're getting a little taste of how much underappreciated teachers are.
Listen,
How big a pain in the
How-
ass
yeah.
it is.
my kids were in school when the new math came out, and I tried
Yeah.
to learn the new math, and I wanted to punch a teacher. I was like, who the hell came up with this
What the hell
crap?
is this?
This isn't
Yeah.
even math. I mean, I can't imagine having to homeschool somebody with this crap. This is so stupid. It doesn't
What
make
was
any sense
wrong
at
with the
all.
old system?
Yeah.
We have to make a new one.
Exactly.
It doesn't even make sense. It doesn't add up. They're like, oh yeah, that perfectly makes sense. I'm like, no, it doesn't. That doesn't add up.
Was it Common Core? That's the new
Yeah.
thing.
No,
That's
it's
a big thing.
it's crap.
How
It's
do you
total
take
crap.
like a
It's like-
division problem that could be solved in 3 moves?
Bingo.
And you're like, hey, do 15 moves and then you put this here and that's it. I'm like,
And it doesn't even add up.
Yeah.
That's the crazy part.
That's all that
The
works.
numbers don't work. It's just a
No.
pattern that somehow
Yeah.
works.
So it's
Well, and my brother and his wife are both school teachers up in Greenwood, or no, I'm sorry, they're in Taylor's now. Taylor, South Carolina, sorry, Alex. They're in Taylor's, and they teach in Greer, and they're having to do a lot of online Zoom classes, or I think they're using Microsoft, something through Google. Google Drive has some kind of classroom thing.
there's another
Anyway,
program.
they're doing these classroom things through there, and they have 2 small kids as well, so they're teaching them at home, and they're having to teach kids away from home. So they're nonstop having to deal with problems with communication, with getting assignments done, with getting assignments turned in, and all this other stuff. And luckily, you know, they have a good enough relationship that they're not at each other's throats. But, you know, my wife's having to work from home every day where she used to be out in the roads dealing with customers on a regular basis in sales. Now she doesn't have that outlet of like venting, which I think is one of the problems of being at home quarantined, which is, I would imagine, increasing domestic violence. Is these people now, can't get out and have a conversation with their friends and vent a little bit and be like, this is making me crazy. But then come home and be like, hey, honey, it's good to see you. Where now it's just like every day is like, it's you again.
Yeah.
It's like I wake up and you're always there.
Why are you
You
always
woke
picking
up,
at your
didn't you?
feet?
Yeah.
If you fart one more time, that's it. I'm taking a knife to your skull. I mean, it's terrifying, but it's also one of those things. It's like, okay, how do we get this to go a little bit further? And I wonder if it's a problem with relationships not having a conversational skill because of the internet. I mean, there's goods and bads of the internet, but also one of the bads of the internet is we always show our best selves on Instagram and on Facebook, and then when we're forced to be around each other 24 hours a day, it's like, oh, I'm also a bitch. I mean,
Well, it makes you look at other people. It's like everyone else is living their best life at all times, 24/7, and then I'm over here getting into fights.
Yeah.
Why is this? You know, and then
Yeah. If I hear this one more time, that's it, woman.
Right.
You know, it's like, okay, but if you weren't home, you wouldn't hear this again.
Right.
You would, I don't know. It's a little terrifying.
I'm pretty lucky. I've still obviously had to go to work, and my fiance still had to go to work. But like when I get to work and I'm talking to every other sergeant in my district has kids, so they wake up at 7 a.m. and they teach our kids all day, and then they come deal with all the childish bullshit work. I'm like, oh, that's a hard pass, man.
Yeah.
I'm like, thank God I don't have to do that.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
what scares me about becoming a parent is when my kids are in like mid-grade school and long division
They're
comes
like
around.
smarter than you.
And I have to help them with that, and I have to lie to them, and they have to fail math because of me, and then I have to punish them for failing math.
What's bad is when you get a bad grade and you're like, I got the bad grade. I thought I knew that. I knew it a long time ago. Yeah.
I've always loved when the science projects was brought home with the kids, and I'm like, oh, that's your science project that I have to do. I'm like, okay, well, let's figure this out. Or wait a minute, let me back that up one second. Let me do this here. It just kills me because they know that at certain levels and certain points that these kids are not capable.
Yeah.
Most kids are not capable. I'm not saying all kids. Most kids are not capable of producing that. So
One of the projects we had to do, I say we,
yeah.
my stepson came home with a project to do a diorama of a powerful political figure, and it was like, okay, what are you going to do it on? And he decided to do it on Joseph Stalin. So it's like, what are you going to do as a diorama for that?
Yeah.
He goes,
Personal
I have
hero
no
of
idea.
mine.
And I'm like, oh crap. So we had to brainstorm as a family to come up with an idea. We ended up making in the oven some of that clay that you model, and you like have a wire frame on the inside, and you bake them in the oven, and then you bring them out and you paint them and you put
When
them.
you say ovens and Joseph Stalin in the same
I know.
sentence,
Isn't that so wrong?
It makes me nervous.
It's wrong.
Dude, that is so wrong on so many levels.
Yeah.
But when he came out, he looked great, and we put a big Russian flag behind him, and he had him in the podium, and he looked all mad, and we drew his face on him and stuff. And then I was like, and then when he turned it in, like he did a really good project researching the guy and wrote a good thing. And then when he turned it in, I was like, so what did we get on our grade? Because I was like, I'm in it now.
I'm invested.
I spent so much time making this dude out of clay, And then like
You talk to that teacher.
the
if we
following
have
year,
any-
he did one on Abraham Lincoln, and I went, it's time to turn Joseph Stalin into Abraham Lincoln. Changed the flag, we put a hat on him, put a beard.
We can do this.
And again, I was like, what did we get?
Well, what did you get?
We got an A.
Very
You know.
nice.
There you go.
Very proud of you.
But this was like, as a parent, it's one of those things where I never had the support as a kid because my mom at the time, love you, Mom, happy Mother's Day, was a full-time nurse. She was going to college to further her career. She's now a nurse practitioner and a nurse practitioner instructor at Francis Marion University. She teaches the doctorate program. She's a big deal. But at the time, she's working 60 hours in 4 days and going to college full-time. So it was, hey, Josh, you have this project. Good luck. And it was literally me going, I guess I'm getting an F.
I think you and I had, my mom was an ER nurse and an ICU nurse, and she was also taking classes all at the same time. You and I had the same childhood.
Happy Mother's Day.
Yeah, happy Mother's Day, Mom. Jennifer Moore, love you.
Nurses Week, we love
Yeah,
you.
actually, yeah.
Yeah,
love you very
missed
much.
it.
Yep.
And you're a nurse. You're wonderful.
Yep. Yeah, I just had my mom on last Saturday or Sunday. She came on and she talked about Nurses Week and how they're doing the
Nice.
fundraising thing and all this stuff.
It's actually Police Week started yesterday, as it turns out.
Jeez.
Multiple weeks overlapping.
Yeah, no, there's that. Yeah, I guess. Which I will say, where we work, Police Week is a phenomenal time.
Really?
We have a union hall that is also a bar. It's the same thing.
I wouldn't even
And
call it a union.
It's open for about 72 hours straight.
I give it about 96 hours straight. Doesn't close.
It does not close, and we have spent
Yeah.
many a long days in there on Police Week. Where it's
I
just
walked out at 7:30 in the morning, 3 days in a row.
If they have karaoke, I'm in.
They do. It's so where we're at, we're centrally located. Like guys from Canada come down, guys from New York come over,
Chicago,
Cincinnati,
everyone.
Chicago.
Just
all,
becomes
all
a
the-
pissing contest at the end of the day.
Everyone's
Just-
telling stories who can outdrink who, and
Yeah.
I vividly remember a Cincinnati policeman taking a pitcher of beer, and he was trying to drink out of it, and he poured the whole thing over his face like a wet T-shirt contest, and then all his friends left him there, and they had to. He actually semi got arrested, but it is what it is.
Believe it or not, more calls that week are made to the union hall about police fighting each other than anywhere else in
Well,
the
see,
city.
it sounds like we're in the Marine Corps, man.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we did in the Marine Corps. You know,
Not
we
real
would
far
fight with
off,
each other, and we at one time I was stationed in El Toro. We closed that base in Irvine, California. Moved to Tustin. They closed that base and moved us to Miramar. When they moved us to Miramar, we were actually moved in with the Navy, still moving to White Plains.
Miramar, like Top Gun.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the Navy had moved to Nevada, and we took over the base, and they were still sort of
Why
there
would the Navy go to Nevada? That's pretty.
because there was an incentive to move their top secret flight stuff there.
Area 51.
No, I'm not saying that. There's no evidence. Don't look at us.
Get that? What's that red dot on your forehead? Right
Yeah.
Keep moving. Zigzag. But yeah, so we moved into I remember specifically we moved into a quad where we were one L and the Navy's in the other L, and we would, for fun, throw our furniture into the quad and burn it every weekend and have fights with each other. And they would look out of the blinds like, holy shit,
Four.
come out there. And we would go up and threaten them and knock on the door. Come on, play with us. You know, like, fuck you guys. They would call the MPs and we'd be like, we'll fight you too, motherfucker. You know, it'd just be crazy.
We're
But-
a corporation. We're not the military.
Right. So, and it was funny because we had to like do, you know, patrol each night and guard each night. So if you were having to stand watch, we'd go in there and screw with everybody who was on watch anyway. And my last night in, before I got out, I was on watch. And of course the guys broke in and tried to get me, and I was like, I ended up fighting everybody. I left with like bruises all over me, and I was like, I didn't get a black eye. I gave like 3 guys a black eye, but I was like, screw you guys, I'm not doing this. But it was fun. Like it was family, you know. So it was one of those things where we're a family, we're a brotherhood, but also screw those Navy guys. Whatever, they're not part of us, unless except for the Corps man, because we love the Corps man.
Most important guy.
Yes.
From the Navy, of course.
Yes, he was actually our favorite guy to party with.
Yes.
He was actually a handsome fellow, and if we took him out to the movie theater, he could get us in the theater for free because he would flirt with the girl up front, and she would just immediately, oh, you guys can come over here. And I'm like, Jesus, you have a superpower. What is your superpower? Devin Bosch, if you're still out there, I love you, dude.
That's pretty awesome.
You got me into way too many movies for free.
You're the man.
But yeah. So you guys are switching over to press. Is that what's going on here? Are you out of regular beer?
A little bit.
Listen, shout out to Press. You guys have a great Instagram. I reached out to you guys on Instagram. I don't know if you're even watching this or you can give a shit. But we, in Florence, South Carolina, did not have access to Press. It was coming from Ohio and from Florida. And I reached out to you on Instagram, and within a day, you had it at our local IGA. And also built a display the next day. So thank you for actually coming through and replying and showing us your product. It's actually pretty good. I had the lemongrass lime the other day, and it was really good. I haven't tried the other flavors.
I
Lemon
actually
lime
never
is
tried
the
this
best.
until like last week when you was at the pool.
I don't like the other seltzer crap that y'all were drinking, but this is pretty good.
Yeah, I didn't have my regular stuff, so I dove into the wife's stash, and as it comes to find out, it's not that bad stuff.
When he says wife stash, I immediately think that she has a mustache. Or it's something dirty to do with like a special cut, you know?
Got that one fish.
Oh.
Sorry.
Jesus, Meg, skip through this part if you listen.
Wow.
Good God. she's gonna listen to hear how bad I mess this up, and
She's not gonna listen to this at all. Are you kidding me? She doesn't have time to listen to us. She's so busy.
Oh, jeez. Let's hope so.
No, she's not gonna listen to us. She's like, oh, you guys are idiots, whatever.
Yeah.
Right now, they're watching probably something on TV, going, thank God we're not watching the USC.
I saw them open up Netflix. The second
Yeah.
they were walking
Yeah.
out.
They were way ruined.
They were ready to go.
I'm like, oh look, the fight's on.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll send him in the bedroom to watch Netflix. I don't care.
There you go. There you go.
So as a Marine, I just gotta put this one dig at you.
Okay, I'm fine.
What is the largest U.S. maritime assault ever?
The largest U.S. maritime assault.
World
World War II?
You're storming
yeah.
a certain beach
Yeah.
in
Midway?
Normandy.
Yeah, you're talking about
Alright.
D-Day.
The battle
How
of
many?
Midway.
How many Marines were in that maritime assault?
Well, they were all in Japan. You can't really.
There weren't a single one.
Really?
Just gotta throw that out there.
I mean,
I wasn't even a thought then, so it doesn't matter.
yeah, as a history buff, and I do not like the Marines, no offense.
That's okay.
I will take credit for those dudes because the Army went through, like, you know, Belgium and all these beautiful countries where they were giving them chocolate and everything, and those dudes were slogging through the mud in Japan.
I don't think they were in
Yeah.
Japan yet.
Okay, we'll talk about Guam, Iwo Jima. I love you, and I love the Army. Shout out. Dude's got a point on that one. Just saying.
Listen, there's a lot of history that goes on in all the forces that is really commendable. And it's weird because growing up as a kid, you don't understand what nationalism is or patriotism is
Oh, right.
really until you start learning about the history and the people who died before you to give up their freedoms and their lives for what you have. And that sort of builds a different pride in yourself whenever you see the flag raised, or you see that people are you know, giving praise to someone who gets an award or someone who has died in service. And you get really offended by, you know, these groups that are like, oh, you should have done this for your country, you're just a killer. And you're like, shut up.
Right.
First
Yeah.
off, shut up.
Like, my grandpa was an MP in World War II, so, like, when the Nuremberg trials happened,
Yeah.
he guarded every one of those dudes and then watched them get executed. And he has never been more proud of anything than watching Goering and all those dudes get smoked.
Yeah.
He literally watched those guys. And I was like, yep, that's pretty badass in my opinion, man.
Mhm.
Like,
My grandfather was in the Army as a cook during World War II, and he was in Japan. They were supposed to be the group that volunteered to die to be the forward movement that was going to draw all the fire as the other battalions came from different angles to attack when they decided to drop the bomb. And he said, we had signed up to die. Like, that was our thing. He said, I made my peace with God, and that was going to be it. And he said, but they decided to drop the bomb. They told us not to look at it. We all looked at it.
Yeah.
He's like, and immediately when we came ashore, a lot of guys were like, there is no God, because I could not imagine a God creating this. And he was like, I immediately knew there was a God because nothing could be this powerful.
right.
And he brought home one of the Japanese rifles I have in the closet. My dad gave to me,
Oh, shit.
and the blade on the bayonet is still razor sharp. The rifle is, it's not fireable right now. I could get it fireable, but why would I want to?
You know,
Right now, it's just worth the story of me knowing that it came from my grandfather from this war.
Wow.
And
that's a different generation.
he came home. He came home to Georgia, and immediately went back. I mean, he was one of those God-fearing guys that immediately sent his checks back home all the time. He never went out and partied. He never drank until, I don't know if he ever drank, but he always would just, you know, bypass everybody saying, "Hey, come on, hang out with these." No, I'm good. Yeah, I'm gonna sit here and study my Bible. Just one of those guys that just lived the life and sent every check home. And when he came home from the war, his wife bought a house. They started a life. They started working in a factory. And they worked their whole life in a factory in Georgia, working for Simmons Mattress Factory. The factory moved to Mexico, and he found himself without a job. And within a year, they came back to him and they said, "Listen, we're making crappy products. We need you to fix it." And he goes, "Okay, well, here's what I want you to pay me." Got to dictate what he got paid.
Wow.
Lived a great life after that. I mean, just, you know, built houses, just incredible life. But every step of the way, he was the walk the walk, talk the talk guy of, this is what a man stands for, and just did not waver, whether it came to God, military, anything.
Mm-hmm.
This is how it is.
Greatest generation for a reason,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely, absolutely.
Absolutely.
That was God, country, and family.
Yeah.
That's all it was,
Uh-huh.
you know?
Well, and it's like, I raised 3 sons, and with every one of them, it was like, listen, we can goof around, we can be silly, but at a certain point, this is the way life is. And I'm going to tell you the facts. And it may not be comfortable.
Right.
You're not going to like it. But I'm going to help you figure it out because that's what you're supposed to do.
So my dad always said, anytime he said something, we were always mad at him about something. He's like, I ain't here to be your best friend.
No.
I'm here to be your father. You may not like me, but I'm going to be your
That's
father.
That's
You
one of the
know,
things I
it's,
always
yeah.
told my daughters. I said, I'm not here to make your life easy.
Yeah.
I'm here to get you ready for the real world. And I was fortunate enough that both of my daughters turned out to be incredible. He can attest to them. The girl he's marrying is very independent. He kind of knew that going into it, and so he knows what he's got his hands into. But
Yeah.
I heard a lot growing up, life's a bitch and then you die, so figure it out.
Yeah.
Pretty much exactly what I heard.
Yeah, that's a reality. And every step of the way, especially as a guy, you're going to be asked a question because you're supposed to be meant to lead. So you're always asked the question, what does this mean? What's going to happen? What do you know? So there's always the insecurity of not knowing what to do. There's always the question of how do I represent myself the right way? How do I become the dominant guy in the group? How do I, blah, blah, blah. And then you get older and you go, none of that matters.
Nope.
Jesus, this is all BS.
I will say, I took a great leadership course. Shout out to the International Association of Chiefs of Police. They put on a leadership and police organizations training. And they didn't teach you how to lead, they taught you about your followers.
Yeah.
So you could understand who you were working with, and then you'd be better to lead them. And that was the best training I think I've ever had.
Yep.
They were never like, this leadership thing works the best. They said, this is what this guy needs, this is what this guy needs, this guy will respond poorly to this. And that was 100% the most effective training I've ever had in 9 years as a policeman.
A long time ago, I heard you have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
You're supposed to listen twice as much.
Yep. And to this day, every day I use those things. And when I work with people, and obviously most policemen are type A personalities.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks they're right. Well, I'm their direct supervisor, and I'm. Everyone says like sergeants is the worst job because you're getting shit on from below and above all at the same time. So I have to diffuse what my lieutenant is telling me, and I have to diffuse what my patrolmen are telling me. And every day I use that training, and it works out because you're talking about, again, 26 dudes, all type, and even the women that work for me are type A personalities.
Oh, yeah.
And they are, all of them think they're right.
Yeah.
So I gotta show them, I'm like, hey, listen, isn't this not so much? Let's do this. And for the most part, that training was the best thing ever, and the 2 ears, 1 mouth thing is the best thing I've ever heard.
Yeah. Well, it's important to listen to people because everybody has a story they want to tell.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody is, even with a type A personality, everybody wants to be heard and seen and everything else. But at the end of it, they have their own insecurities that they're trying to define themselves with of, this is why I feel this way. And it's getting to the root of that, why I feel this way, is what's going to help you relate to them and talk to them and be like, okay, well, listen, this is what I need from you. And that is the communication that you need, which is, is sort of the thing that I think people are missing in today's generation where their face is buried in their phone and all they're doing all day is.
Yeah.
And it's like, talk to one another, have a conversation.
Well, for me,
social skills.
Like, that's a weird thing. Like, I'm 30 now, you're 28.
28?
So,
I'll be 29.
yeah.
As your wife is not fond of you saying, well, why don't you just say your age?
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna be
So
29.
our generation grew up we started with nothing.
Yeah.
And then we got my parents had cell phones when I was going into 6th, 7th, 8th grade. And then I got my own minute cell phone when I was in 10th grade, so I could call from wrestling practice to come get picked up. So then by the time I'm 18, now all of a sudden Verizon's huge, Apple iPhones are coming out. So I've lived without and with.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say I preferred communication without the internet.
I am so
Mhm.
blessed that I would spend half of my life so far.
Okay, then spend less time on Facebook.
with
then.
Al.
Yeah.
Catching up, you're catching up.
All right, you're so ass. Get the hell off Facebook.
Not that your memes aren't funny.
Yeah, Jesus.
But,
You
I
can't
mean,
say that when I
come
watch
on.
you scroll the whole
Oh,
time.
that's my keeping up with friends in Ohio.
Use your phone. Make a phone call. Say
Yeah.
hello.
Yeah.
But yeah, the social skills of some people anymore are you can tell. I mean, unless they can type it, they can't. You know, it's so easy to hide behind a screen. And and the thing I don't like about
Those internet
tech,
tough guys.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and you can interpret messages. I mean, how I read it and how you wrote it
Right.
might be two totally different things. So
Yeah.
That's how a lot of fights start. With,
exactly.
with your loved ones, like, well, I was just saying this, like, well, I thought you said it like this. I thought you were making fun of me.
Yes, they're on
Put that
internal
extra-
dialogue of your voice.
Oh,
And it's
yeah.
like, no, I didn't say it that way.
I think
Yeah.
put that extra E in that.
But what generation are we?
Well,
Ian?
we're millennials.
We're millennials.
Millennials.
I think we were having this conversation earlier again. Millennials have had quite a run of it.
Oh
We've
yeah,
had
yeah. We talked about this.
two
one
Great
already, yeah.
Depressions. You know, we've had the longest war in U.S. history.
9/11.
We now have a pandemic to live through.
Yep.
Yeah.
We've lived without major technology. We've lived with, in terms of cell phones, stuff like that. Before the internet,
Yeah.
now the internet.
There's like millennials.
We're doing all right. There's
Right.
There's a large learning curve that you've had to get over very quickly. And a lot of people talk about the fact that a lot of kids have like ADD and ADHD and stuff like that. It's like, no, they're trying to keep up.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
so much crap being thrown at them all the time.
Oh, if you're just buried in a screen 24/7,
I mean, think about the simple thing like music. Okay, say that somebody's into music and it's like, oh, you haven't heard that? Oh, you need to listen to this and this and this and this. Oh, you hadn't heard this, and immediately
Now
people
I
start
feel bad
throwing
'cause I
at
do
you
that to you all the time.
everything. Right. I mean, what popular music started in the 50s, 60s?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you lived during that generation and you had kids later, you're like, catch up.
Right.
Here's the music I like. And so for my generation, it was, oh crap, I gotta listen to all the crap my parents were into and the stuff I like. And then I had kids. Well, there's 30 years of music before that they gotta listen to.
So like for me, I grew up. My dad was an old metalhead.
Mhm.
So like I came home from the hospital as a newborn, listening to AC/DC.
Mhm.
So I grew up listening to old heavy metal, hard rock growing up. So I was lucky to have an old man who graduated into new metal.
Mhm.
So like he and I still listen to the same music. It's never changed for me.
Right.
I've never had to catch up with anything. Like I still enjoy going back and listening to original Black Sabbath, like before Ozzy.
Mhm.
So it's great, like for me. But then like I'll tell him, like on the way down here, I'm like, oh, you haven't heard this new metal band? Like you gotta check out. Da, da, da,
Well,
da,
not only
da,
that,
da, da.
but like we're watching UFC in there. Okay, so you're talking about wrestling,
Mhm.
and you're like, I like wrestling, and immediately you think, God, if I had kids today, I'd immediately get them into jiu-jitsu because why
Right.
not?
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus Christ, at least that way they could choke somebody out if they're coming after them. I got enough Joe Rogan in me to know jiu-jitsu is
Right.
really important.
Jiu-jitsu is wildly important.
I mean, but even he talks about having a good wrestling base is really important.
So,
it's like, well,
I-
yeah.
I talked to a dude who said that basically the American wrestling, what we know as folk style,
Mhm.
is the greatest base you can have for mixed martial arts of all time.
Mhm.
Because it plays into jiu-jitsu. Like when it comes, I mean, as long as you don't put your head on the outside, you're not going to get choked out. If you
Yeah.
shoot an inside single, they can't get your head. You might get caught in an armbar if you leave your elbow up like an idiot. But for the most part, even a great jiu-jitsu guy won't be able to choke you out right away.
But you would think with even all that knowledge, with common folks watching this stuff, that they would go, I don't know if I want to start a fight with that guy because you don't know what kind of
Right.
training he's got.
Well,
but
I-
still, you see crap on Facebook every day where it's like, yeah, I'm gonna take my chances, and you're like, oh, this is not gonna turn out well.
What was you thinking?
Basically, the biggest life lesson you could ever have is if a guy has cauliflower ear, don't
Yeah.
fuck with him.
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
just leave him alone.
Yeah.
That guy's gonna kill you. Just so you know.
Or in one of these street fight things that you see on Facebook, if you're making a move and he immediately moves into a stance, you're like,
Mhm.
oh crap.
Yeah, let me tell you, the NCAA championships came to our city for wrestling, and there was a few good fights where it's just like, all right, we know who. You don't want to pick
Yeah.
fights with these guys.
Oh, yeah.
You know who
Yeah.
was winning these.
Well, I used to be friends with a guy I worked at Budweiser with, and then
Amen, brother.
he eventually came to work at
Got your hat on.
at the same.
Oh.
Yeah.
He eventually came to work where I work now at a food distributorship, and I remember back in the early days of UFC cage fighting, if you will.
You mean like UFC 1, like when it was
In the
bare
very
knuckle?
beginning,
Oh.
he was an early adapter because he was a grappler, and he knew jiu-jitsu well back in the day when it first started.
Mhm.
But he was also known as one of these guys that could bare knuckles knock somebody out quickly. So in matches, he was really good. But he said even back then, the most money I could make was 40 grand. and that was with betting on myself and hoping that I win. And he goes, but at any moment I could be knocked out.
Right.
And he's like, but I was considered one of the best at the time. He goes, but none of that matters. He goes, nowadays, I mean, you could be the 1,000th best in the world, and you can make twice as much money as I was making then.
It takes a special amount of person to
Yeah.
not make much money and then get the crap beat out of them. You know.
Right.
Well, I mean, that's why he got a legitimate job. He's like, I had to make insurance. I had kids that I had to raise, and they needed, dental appointments, and I had the money for that. But he eventually took over where I worked in a Raleigh-Durham area, which was very crime-ridden. There was a specific area in particular where every night I would get approached by random hoodlums looking for crack, looking for money, looking for what. I'm trying to find a creative way to say this.
We're telling on ourselves.
I'm not saying.
I thought you were gonna say hookers, but
Well, those two. $5 baby off a chicken. I'm like, no.
that's still overpaying.
Yeah. So he eventually took over that route for me, and I said, listen, you're going to be approached a lot, but you've got nothing to worry about. I was like, if anybody approaches you, it's going to turn out very badly for them. Because this guy would fold them up like a pretzel and send them on their way, But yeah, I mean, I can't imagine the development that it took, in this whole process. But also, like, if you raise kids nowadays, like, do I send my kid out unprepared, or do I just immediately, as a kid, go, hey, lison, let's take some self-defense classes?
So this, like, for going back to the millennial thing, like where I'm at now, getting promoted, I was the youngest police officer to get promoted where I work, like of all time. So I went into, they're all Gen X's, and I wouldn't say baby boomers, but they're very close to that edge. And they all hate millennials. They all think we're the scourge of the earth. And they don't think I'm a millennial because of the way I act. Because I had a dad that was like, hey, listen, dude, everything's gonna be handed to you. You gotta work for some things, and then you gotta have your own opinions, and you build it. And they have the hardest time understanding that most millennials will do what you ask if you give them a reason why.
Yeah.
Like, I want to know why you want me to do it this way. Is it the best way? Is it your way? Is it the most efficient way? Is it faster? Is it just the way it's always been done?
Now, there's a big problem right there. A lot of people feel, and I'm not gonna say just my generation, but I'm gonna say
it is
the
your
majority
generation.
of my
Your generation is the put your head down and work and shut up.
Well, it's a generation of this is the way we've done it. This way we've always done it,
Right.
and we never really like people to question why we done it that way. It
Well, it
just-
also comes from having parents who went through the Depression,
yeah,
Yep.
where they would just say, do this, and if you
Yeah.
didn't do it, you get smacked.
exactly.
Right.
So it's
Don't
like,
ask
that's
why,
your
just
only
do it.
option. And so you're trained from the very beginning of, do this, and you go, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, the department we work for is so set in their ways, and we've had this huge culture shift where they didn't hire anyone for like 8 years.
Yeah.
And now they've hired about 450 people in the past 5 years.
Yeah,
6 years.
we've been on for six
6
years
years.
now, and we got almost 500 people below us in seniority.
Like,
It's
I got
it's
promoted
nuts.
almost 2 years ago, and I have almost 55 sergeants under me.
Wow.
So we're about to have this giant culture shift to all of a sudden the old way isn't going to work anymore. But you have old City Hall who thinks it should work the old way.
Mm-hmm.
But everyone that's going to be working on the other side is going to say, why don't we do it this way? This makes, and it's happening now.
Yeah.
Like today. Like every day I come to work and I see some new order and I'm like, why don't we do it this way? This doesn't even make sense. Like this paper, like we're still doing things on paper. It's 2020. What am I still filling out? Like I'm actually handwriting things. Makes no sense.
I can remember way back in my career, when I was into management. One of the guys, my manager, came up to me and had this little plaque that said, "Change is inevitable, growth is optional," and that still sticks in my head to this day.
That's good.
And it's
Right.
read it. Everything you need to know is right there.
Yeah.
I mean, everything is going to change. That's just inevitable.
Yeah.
You can sit
Whether
there
you
and
change
complain
with
about it.
Fantastic.
it is optional.
That's fantastic. That's a
So-
great way to put it.
And
Because like for us, our department, like how long ago do you guys think, like I'm not saying you would know exactly, but how long ago do you think policemen got computers in their cars? Like we're talking 20, 25 years,
oh
right?
yeah.
That was 5 years before we got hired. They didn't have computers in their cars to run people on a computer
2010.
until 2010.
Wow.
Where I work in a major metropolitan city that has
Wow.
hosted major events like
Yeah.
like I'm talking the World Series,
Yeah.
NBA Finals, All-Star games.
Then you have the,
I mean,
one of the
just-
conventions there, or one of the,
I don't know, this giant Republican National
there we go,
Convention.
Republican National
Just
Convention.
this last year, we turned over from, so as a police officer, the way you document everything you're doing every day is a duty report. So just 2 years ago, maybe a year ago, you had to, on paper, write everything you did, within a 10-minute span, everything you were doing. So he said, from, 15:20 to 15:40, I was patrolling this area, and there couldn't be more than a 10-minute lapse where what you weren't doing. So you had to keep writing, and you're writing on paper, not only paper, but paper that
It's
had
a carbon copy.
a carbon copy. So there was 2 copies of that paper, whereas every other department in the world has computers that just track where you go. They say this is where you were, this is where you were,
Yeah.
this is where you were. You didn't have to write it down on paper. It's just it's nuts how
So like
old things
Yeah.
can
So
be and just don't
when-
want to change.
When someone like me, I worked for 2 departments, and I worked for one department in Ohio that was attempting to be very progressive. They were attempting to be on the forefront of everything, like when ShotSpotter first came out, and then that would be like if they heard gunshots, it would tell you where it came from. They would triangulate the area. And the ones they had back in 2012, there was a camera attached to it. So you would hear shots go off, and the camera would spin and start recording from where the shots came from. It wasn't always the most accurate thing, but whatever. So I went from that, and then I came to where I'm at now, and it's like I'm writing what I'm doing on paper.
Yeah.
I'm like, what is this? Is like a third world country.
And
you know?
it's great, at the end of the year, you taking all those duty reports when you got stuck in the office in your first year. You have boxes and boxes of these duty reports that you just throw into some random.
Some storage room.
You just throw them, and there's no filing. It's literally just to make you look better, and it's
Yeah.
just something they
Well,
can tune
so
you up on. at
it's
some
not
point.
even to make you look better. We work for a very punitive department.
Yeah.
So if you mess up, but they can't say, God forbid that I use excessive force,
Right.
but I cover it up good enough. It's not on camera. It's
That's
not
all
on our
God
body
forbid, and
camera.
it wouldn't
It would
happen.
never happen. I don't believe in that sort of thing. I don't believe in punitive punishment. And they couldn't catch me on that. But they could go back on my duty report and say I was at the Shell station at 55th and St. Clair getting a Slurpee for 5 minutes longer than I said I was. They would get me on that, and they would hammer me for it.
They would say
because
you lied on an official document. And say,
I've heard Joe talk about it on his podcast where he said, he thinks that police officers are the hardest job there is possible because you're supposed to control people in a situation that's uncontrollable, and you're also a human, so you're making human
Yeah.
decisions in human situations.
You're talking about emotions.
emotional.
You're talking about
situations.
emotional, like I'll be.
But you
first
also
to admit,
have your normal life to live, so
Yeah.
there's other things that you're dealing with, not only with your job, but outside influences.
So imagine me, like my fiance works in the media.
Yeah.
The media crucifies policemen on a pretty
of course.
regular basis.
Yeah.
Because it's the easiest target to go after in most things.
Well, and the media's whole job is to just tune in tomorrow to
Right.
find out more crap that's going to scare you.
So like when she actually talked to me, and I'm like, hey, listen, this is what a policeman is thinking when this occurs.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I just pulled up on a burglary suspect with his hands in his pants, and he won't show me his hands, and now he's making an aggressive drawing motion, or he's charging me.
Well,
Number
and
one,
and I'm
I
sure,
want to go home.
Yeah, but I'm sure also like you see the things on that people capture on their cell phones where a guy literally way oversteps his bounds, and you're like, why? Why are you doing that?
Yeah, let me.
God, what an idiot move! You're making me look like an idiot. I'm not that guy.
Let me go ahead and preface everything I'm saying with policemen are to blame sometimes.
Yes.
I will never say a policeman is never in the wrong.
Nobody,
Yeah, a lot of times.
nobody is without problems. Nobody is without faults.
People just think
everybody
that
makes
we
mistakes.
blindly defend any police officer,
Right,
officer
no.
that shoots someone.
Yeah.
It can be disgusting for us sometimes. Like we have
Yeah.
both been in a car one time and we watched the police and we said that police officer needs to go to jail right
Yeah.
now. That guy is completely
A
default.
dirtbag. Yeah.
But there's
The one that-
also due process. There
Yeah.
needs to be.
Right.
I mean, look at all right. We've all seen the video of that shooting in Georgia.
Which one?
There was
just
the
happened
2 white
4 days
guys
ago.
and
Oh, recently.
yeah, and a black
Yeah.
guy just happened to be jogging through the
Yeah.
area, and they thought he was a burglary suspect. And
Yeah.
they weren't even cops, or there was
The
some
one
kind
guy
of.
was an investigator for a DA, but what
Right.
investigator from a DA accosts a man with a shotgun while he's allegedly a burglary suspect?
And somebody else filmed it, so they
Right.
planned it ahead of time.
Like, dude, you're not a cop. What you need to do is you need to call the real policeman And you can investigate as a DA later.
And they
So-
think, you know, I mean, a lot of people just think we're just blindly gonna go like, oh yeah, those people are good. It's like, but that doesn't mean that video that was shown to the police. That, you know, who knows when that kind of thing came out. But they think a lot of times that we're all just, especially kind of newer age people like us,
Right.
that we're just gonna go along with the curve. No, a lot of the times, like even guys in our own department, we've been like, nope, that's not right. You're not doing that.
I was,
you know.
I was in high school when the Rodney King thing happened,
Yeah, that's rough.
and I remember at our school here in Florence, there was a lot of outrage, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
and me as obviously a white guy, I'm watching it and I'm going, that is awful. That is awful. I couldn't believe that happened. Also, when you hear more about the story, you're like, okay, well that guy's obviously a dirtbag, but he didn't need to be treated like that.
Right.
That was way beyond what it should have been.
Well, the thing that
But it's also one of those situations where there's no right out at that point. You're just like, this is an awful situation, and all these guys are to blame. But then the judge goes, no, they're fine. You're like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
So, like, my big issue, I think the police went wrong many, many years ago because, like, we used to only use excessive force on, like, say, a bad person.
Yeah.
Like, if someone broke into my house or my mom's house, you
Yeah.
know what I want that dude to get? I want that dude's ass beat.
Hmm?
But the policemen just started beating everybody.
Everybody.
Didn't matter what you did.
Yeah.
And I think most people would agree, like, if someone broke into your mom's house, you want that dude to get tuned up by somebody.
Yeah.
And I think I can say that, and everyone's pretty much fine with it. As long as his handcuffs aren't on. I don't believe in beating a handcuff.
Well, I mean, and
That's
there's plenty of
ridiculous.
movies out there, like Copland is a good example of a guy who's in a situation where there's dirty cops in an area, and he's sort of left there to be the
A
idiot.
lone good cop. Or,
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, he's supposed to let all this stuff go. That these guys are way overstepping their bounds, and he's like, no. But you start seeing that as a average person sitting at home, and you're like, oh God, this. I mean, they didn't write this for nothing. This probably happens some places.
Dude, the stories we hear where we work,
Yeah.
like,
Ooh.
so,
Watch Cops in Cleveland.
Yeah,
the
so-
show Cops. These guys are
Yeah.
like,
they're nuts.
if you could find it, but like the stories I've heard of what used to happen in 70s, 80s, 90s, and even post Rodney King, because like in Cleveland where we were, it was never this big deal. Because they weren't doing it to just some dude minding his own business. Like it was always someone who deserved it.
Yeah.
A actual criminal, not like the videos you see today, like someone like Rodney King. Okay, there's a police pursuit, all these things. The dude's handcuffed, man.
Right.
Does that make you feel like a real man beating a handcuffed subject?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
That's
Or
like
the one in North Charleston where the guy's running away.
running away with
Oh,
his
that was-
taser.
That was
Yeah.
disgusting.
Yeah,
One-
that
Yeah.
is.
That was one of the ones we watched. We watched together in the car. We're like that.
Oh, yeah.
That officer
Well,
needs to
I'm
go
sure
to jail.
that
That guy is
that being
terrible.
your job, you're like, okay, guys, we have to talk about this. Here's a video. And you're
Yeah.
like,
Dude,
really?
The dude fires 7, misses all, and then he's like, oh wait, and then he draws down, takes time to actually line his sights up, and fires a killing shot. And it's like, no, that's a
Yeah.
hard pass.
Yeah.
That's a hard. I mean, there's literally a
Well-
Supreme Court case, Tennessee versus Gardner, about shooting fleeing felons. Because apparently back in the 70s, if there was a felon fleeing from you, you could just shoot him.
Yeah, if someone committed some type of felony and they were running away, you could shoot them legally and get away as a police officer.
Well, there's a lot of discussion about the fact of, a lot of times police aren't trained for hand-to-hand combat. They're uncomfortable in situations whenever they're confronted with an assailant who throws hands and they're not comfortable with what I do, so they immediately shoot because they're
Yeah.
afraid.
Well, the problem is we are trained technically. We had 6 months of training of it, but to say 6 months of trainings and then 10 years later you can
Yeah.
do a hand fight with someone,
Yeah.
and you got some
Or if
old
you-
lazy cop that doesn't want to continue
Yeah.
any type of physical training anymore.
Or
He's
if you
getting
have
his
a
ass
female
beat.
cop who doesn't
know?
have
Oh, right,
the
right, right.
size advantage to someone who's 100 pounds
And
heavier than her.
every cop, police officer that works in our gym unit, they
Yeah.
say this is a perishable skill. You need to keep working this. I mean, half
Yep.
of our gym unit has been in the UFC,
Yeah.
and
They
they tell you
need
they
to
say.
be, absolutely.
And they say, do not stop this training. Keep up with it.
Yeah.
This is a perishable skill. You need to keep working
Listen,
with it.
I got out of the Marine
you know?
Corps in '98, and I really wanted to join the Highway Patrol here in South Carolina because to me it was a natural fit. I keep the wearing uniform, I can keep my
Yep.
flat top high and tight.
Woo, baby!
Did you have that little
Right
brush
across.
top? Where
I
it
had
was
the- I had the
where
flat top.
Where it stuck up just a little bit.
No, I didn't do that weird horseshoe thing. I did the flat top.
That's
It
how
was-
you knew you were
it
getting
looked
a
like kid-
ticket. You
it's
get pulled over by that
kid and
guy.
play, you know?
Yeah, right.
I had the sunburn that was at the right place. You know, I'd go to the black barber in town. He'd get like a level, and he'd get it just perfect. I'm like, yeah, baby, we're doing stuff.
Yeah. Give me
He'd
an
get the
uptown
straight
fee.
razor all around. I'm like, I can hear the wind whistle.
License registration. please.
Yeah, so I knew when I got out, this is what I'm going to do, and I applied. And that's when Fox started putting down a TV show where police officers were getting assaulted on the side of the road, and immediately they showed a girl from South Carolina. She got pulled
I know
over.
exactly what video you're talking about.
a
We've seen this
a
video.
large black man who was wanted
Yep.
got
Yep.
out
And
and
he-
literally beat her
he-
almost to death.
Yes, he did.
And I watched
Yep.
that and I thought, yeah, I'm not doing that.
They showed us that video like first days of our police academy. They showed
She
a couple
was,
of them.
she
where
was like
cops losing fights.
120 pounds,
But, like-
and he was like 260, 270,
Yeah,
and almost beat her to
That's a
death
special
on the side
kind
of the road.
person to-
that video literally makes my blood boil.
It was-
because
It
not
made,
because it's a cop, but
it
it's a
made my
woman. You're
testicles
beating
hurt.
on a
I mean,
woman,
I
you
watched
know,
it,
it's
and
just-
immediately I felt like I was kicked in the nuts. I was like, oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
there are like very few things like. So I've had people that want to fight to get away,
Yeah,
and then I've had people that want to fight to fight.
yeah.
And like that fight to fight, that's enjoyable. That's a good time
Yeah.
right there because that's where
What was the Jake Gyllenhaal movie?
it's
Line of Fire.
End
or
of
something?
Watch.
Yes,
Which
End of
if-
Watch.
If any of you watch
Mm.
End
Listen.
of Watch, that is the most realistic movie
Yes.
when it comes to being in a car with another cop.
Yes,
I
Michael
will-
Pena.
Michael Pena is the
Great together.
When
Great team.
I will tell you, like when Michael Pena drops the gun belt and fights that dude in the house,
Yep.
I've seen that happen.
Yep.
In 9 years as a policeman, and I've been a part of that. I've done it. I've seen it. It's
I
That
love the
is
line. Listen, I'm a man,
legitimate.
you're a man.
yeah.
No rules here. Let's just
Yeah.
go, buddy.
Like, I'm not- and up until the end of that movie, where backup takes like 30 minutes
Yeah.
to get there, like I've been a part of like calling for every car that can get there. That would never happen, but that movie is the most realistic police movie you'll ever see because, like he and I, there are days where it's like, hey man, I don't want to do anything today, but one of us is in a feisty mood. Hey, what's in that car? And next thing you know, you're fighting with 3 dudes in the car. Like one guy's trying to get out, one guy's reaching under the seat,
Yep.
like the Magic City standoff.
Oh, I
that wasn't you.
wasn't there for that one.
Yeah, you know.
Sorry, yeah.
I was off that day. He took the day off.
Magic City, also a strip club in Atlanta. Shout out to Magic City.
So it turns out,
That's a terrible part about being a partner too, because you never know. You take a day off, and your partner could be in the worst possible situation
Yeah.
ever. You know.
so I mean, I'll
And you don't have a choice of who your partner is.
Mhm.
Sometimes you're just paired up and you're like, oh,
Right.
Jesus, I got this guy.
Well, that's the thing. Like I take off too, and then he gets paired up with the worst policeman that I know of. You know, somehow because no one wants to work with him, so he gets paired up with him. So I'm leaving my buddy high and dry just so I can go. I don't know. Yeah, have a nice day weekend. You never know what's gonna happen.
Yeah, you were partying. So like, it's,
He's sending you Instagram pictures.
the dude literally
You're
like
like, you motherfucker.
he called me. He's like, "Hey man, what are you doing?" And I hear a beer crack in the background. I'm like, "You're taking the night off, aren't you?" Yeah, I am. So like this is the craziest thing that I think I've been in where we work now. We had a car. These 2 dudes were some of the best policemen I've ever met. They were like natural. Have you ever watched The Wire?
Yes.
So when they say natural police,
Mhm.
these 2 dudes were natural police.
There wasn't a night they didn't come away with a gun.
Yeah, you're talking about one of the highest crime, like a top 5 crime city in America. These dudes arrested a guy with a gun nightly.
Jesus.
These dudes were incredible. So they pull up to a car, 4 people in the car, and they walk up on the car. One guy's holding a gun. The other 2 guys are reaching for guns. So they're calling out for all cars. So I'm the first car to get there. The dude in the back seat is still holding the gun. He hasn't dropped it yet. And the door's open. So I dive in and he and I are now fighting over this gun. So I get the gun away from him. It goes under the seat. I'm able to drag him out of the car. There's a female in the car. The female gets shoved out of the car. Meanwhile, they're trying to break out the front windows for the 2 guys that are reaching for guns. So I'm arresting my guy. There's a gun under the seat. These dudes close the doors, and then now it becomes a standoff in a car. So you're talking about, like,
Jeez.
holy cow! Like I'm in this car already.
Yeah.
So if they had thrown it in drive and just pulled off,
Yeah.
I'm in the car with 3 dudes with a gun. Not the most tactical decision, obviously. I admit that. Now, at the time, I was real fired up.
Yeah.
So it ends up being about a 6-hour standoff. Our SWAT team shows up. They fire tear gas in the car. Both dudes come out firing on our SWAT team. Each of them gets shot 19 times with 5.56 rounds.
They
Both-
would not die.
Were you in the car with the tear gas?
No.
Okay, I was gonna say that's an added bonus.
Yeah. No, I've done the tear gas routine. That's a hard pass for me.
Oh, that's fun stuff right there, buddy.
Yeah, both those dudes took
The only cure to the common cold.
20,
Yeah.
20 some years is what they got
Yeah.
for shooting on our SWAT team.
Jeez.
So, like, when it comes down to when we watch the police, what we do and what we think is wrong, we're just like everyone else.
Yeah.
Like, I watch some of this stuff and I go, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Why didn't you back up? Why didn't you do something different?
And I think we're more critical
Yeah.
as police officers of
Yeah.
other police officers.
Oh,
Say,
yeah.
it's not just Monday morning quarterbacking this kind of thing. It's like, listen, I know exactly what
Yep.
you should be doing in that situation because I've been in that situation and I know you've been in that situation. You don't just go in there. It's someone walked off with your taser.
Yeah.
Well, you gotta shoot them in the back. That's disgusting.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Well, it's the same. Well, no matter what your job is, let's say, I mean, like, what is it? Marine Corps? Anytime I hear Marine did blah blah, and you're like, really? Or if you're a nurse and you hear about a nurse who did something, or if you're whatever,
Right.
whatever your job is, you hear about it in the news of somebody doing something stupid. You're like, why are you making me look bad? You know, it was weird when 9/11 happened. I was working for Budweiser at the time. I had a lot of convenience
Don't get this guy
stores.
started on
I had
it.
convenience stores in the area that a lot of them were owned by, you know, people from the Middle East
Yeah.
who come to America to find a better life. And when this happened, I had a lot of them come to me and they're like, listen, I don't want those guys as bad as you do. He's like, that's misrepresenting me. I came
Right.
to this country for opportunity. I want my kids to have a better life. This is not what we stand for.
Yeah, there's a difference between practicing a religion
Yeah.
and being an extremist.
But
in a
being-
religion, you
Exactly.
can't
Being down here in
lump
the
everyone.
South, it's one of those things where they immediately see this guy and they go, well, this guy must be one of those guys.
Oh yeah.
And he's like, I'm
Jeez.
raising my kids here. Like, this
Right.
is the
My
life
kid
I
goes to the
chose.
same school as
Yeah,
you.
he's like, this is the life I chose. This is what I wanted for my kids, not that.
Right.
And it's like, you know, it's that weird obstacle of getting around what someone looks like versus what their character is. And, you know, then again, you know, we had recently with the shooting, I mean, in Georgia. I mean,
Yeah, that's
very
that was
unfortunate.
terrible.
I mean, geez.
And it shocked us because I remember we watched it and we're like, that guy's got to be arrested in the next day.
Yeah.
So neither of us knew that was months
It was
ago
in
that
February.
shooting happened.
that occurred in February.
And when we
Yeah,
both
people
were
are
in
just
that,
not
we were
talking
like,
about
oh
And,
my
like,
god,
I
that's
don't
terrible.
know, like, and I hope that because there was a radio show host that filmed that.
Oh, jeez.
So
I heard he's being charged too, though,
is he?
Yeah.
Probably because
because he apparently knew about it ahead of time. It was premeditated.
Really?
Yeah.
Jesus.
I mean, it had to. I mean, that was.
Well, they-
Everyone
they had
involved
told
with
him,
that should
film
just
this,
go
we're
to
gonna do
jail
this.
for life. That was
Either
disgusting.
way, man, like that's a disgusting act, and I hope those two dudes get their due process, and I hope they're found guilty by a jury
Yep.
of their peers, and that's it, man.
That
I-
video just made me. I mean, that,
it just makes me mad because as a human being, you want to be treated like a human being.
Yeah.
If you're on a jog in your neighborhood, you
Yeah.
want to be
You're
treated
talking
like a
to
human
you.
being.
could you imagine fighting with someone with a shotgun and just
Yeah,
you
that's-
don't know what's gonna happen? But
Listen,
really, I mean, it's
my wife's 4'11", and so she's terrified of anybody bigger than. I'm twice her size. I'm only 5'8", but I'm still twice her physical size. And we had somebody come and knock on our back door a few years ago, and immediately when they knocked at the back door, I said, "Go get the shotgun." And she goes, "What?" I said, "Go get the shotgun. And when I tell you, I want you to cock it."
mm,
And she was like, "This is for real." I go, "Go get it."
I will say
She
you
went.
never
She
know.
went and got it. And when I opened the door, there's some young kid at my back door. He's like, "Hey, I'm selling blah blah." I was like, "No, my back door, you're not." I said, "Now." And she goes, "Now?" I go, "Now." She cocked it. He ran. And I said, "That's the universal language of get out of here."
right.
I said, "That's why I bought that shotgun, because everybody knows the sound of that shotgun means it's time for you to leave."
You don't even need ammo.
No matter what side you're on, that sound means it's time for you to leave, because you don't have to be accurate. It's just, it's going
Right.
to end now. Our conversation's done.
I will say, as a policeman, there is nothing better than this giant street fight. You take that 12 gauge out of your car and you put one in the chamber.
Yep.
That gets everyone, even if they've never shot a shotgun.
It's
you know
universal.
the sound.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Know the sound.
It's the same thing as seeing a snake. You're like, okay, I'm done. I'm
Yep.
done. This is all done. I'm done fighting. This is
Yep.
You just
Yeah.
trumped my ace.
If someone pulled out a pistol, you're still like, I'm gonna take my chances.
Yeah,
you hear that
okay.
shotgun, you're like, okay, I'm
It's hard to miss with 9. I mean, if you got buckshot, or
Yeah.
with a slug, you gotta be a little more accurate. But if you're buckshot, you got 9, like 30 rounds in there.
Yeah.
Talking about,
It's
I'm gonna
gonna
get you
scatter.
with 3 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
3 out of 9, I'm comfortable with.
And to circle back to Dave Chappelle, what is it? Buckshot, slug round, buckshot.
Yeah. Just we had a friend who was, when we bought the shotgun, and he was like, she was going to buy the shells and stuff for me right off the bat. And he's like, do you want to make an impact? Do you want to do this? She goes, I don't know, the one that goes. He called me. He goes, what rounds do you want? I said, whatever kills. He goes, double aught. I said, that sounds great.
Yep.
Yep.
And he
So-
tapped on these ones as if to
Yeah.
mention,
Yeah.
these are the ones that'll
She's
do
like,
it.
she's like, what if it messes up the wall? I said, I don't care. We'll get a new wall.
You can fix the driveway.
Yeah, we'll fix that. Don't worry about that. I want you to be safe.
I think Danny asked me about home defense one time, and I said the first thing you should get is a shotgun.
Mhm.
You don't got to be accurate. You don't got to have your glasses on.
Exactly.
If you see a shadow, shoot the shadow. You're
Yeah.
trying
Shoot
to
for
be
mass.
alright. Yep.
My granny, when she was in her 80s, she was living by herself. My grandfather had passed away, and she had my uncle was in the police force in Atlanta, and he had his service .38 revolver still, and he had taken her out trying to shoot it, and it's just too much kick for her. But she had a 22 that she felt comfortable with.
22, man.
She would sleep with a 22 under her pillow, and she kept the 38 in the nightstand. And she says,
Nice.
she said, I figure if they break in, I'll shoot him with the 22, slow him down, pick up the 38, and finish the job.
Yeah.
She says, or I'll sit there and hold him with the 38, call the cops, and be like, let me tell you about Jesus.
I will say those 22s do more damage than a lot of people think.
Yeah.
Because they bounce.
Oh, yeah.
So if you get hit center mass with a 22, it's
Oh,
bouncing
it bounces around.
throughout
Well, the
your
38 will blow
body.
through you. The 22 will still
Yeah.
hang around. I mean, that's
Yes.
causing you all kind of damage while it's still there.
Like I've seen plenty of murders happen with a 22 where you're like, wow, what is that little thing? How'd that get him? Oh, because it bounced around from his belly.
Once it goes in
button
there,
all
it
the way
goes through
up.
some more
Cleans
internal
you out.
organs there, yeah.
All the soft spots.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's rough.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, guys, I appreciate what you do for a living.
Thanks, man.
It's really dangerous. It's really important. And I know that it's not easy. During this pandemic, it is important for everybody to be safe. I would like to remind everybody, be courteous to each other, be cautious of each other, be extra, compassionate to one another. I mean, it's one of those things where you kind of want to give everybody a little bit of understanding of, hey, we're all going through this together, and we will get through this together. But it takes everybody kind of doing their part. If you're stuck at home and you're quarantined, don't beat your wife.
Please.
Listen,
Just remember, just because you don't believe in it doesn't mean your neighbor doesn't believe in it.
Listen,
all right?
Chris Rock
Give them
said it a long
respect.
time ago. Don't do it. I understand. Just don't do it. Don't. But yeah, I mean, wash your hands often, practice social distancing, all that fun stuff. You got anything to add?
Just that, if we're talking about cops, a lot of the older cops are moving out from now on, and there's, as we said, the millennials are moving on in. It's gonna be a new age of policing, people. Just let us be, all right? We don't think in all that old sense where everything a cop does is right. Okay.
Yeah.
We can take criticism.
Have conversations. Like, here's one of the things that I've thought about is
perfect.
like, get to know your community, get to know your local police. If they're in your area, stop once in a while and say hello and say thank you and that kind of thing. It goes a long way.
They're human beings. They're human
Yeah.
beings just like we are.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I know a lot of the folks that live in these areas where there's a lot of crime. The folks that live there just want the crime to stop too. I mean,
That's all it is.
it's just, certain people have a little too much freedom, a little too much alpha male. I got to dominate. I got to be the man. You're like, shut up, whatever. Get over yourself.
I mean, I got hired at 21, so that was me. And I have now changed to realize that is not the way to get it done.
Right.
So at this point in my life, I talk first, and then we'll figure it out with physicality if it happens. But for the most part, I prefer to use words. So if you find some cop that's real rough and aggressive or whatever, and the conversation ain't going great, just listen. Leave it alone and listen. Have your day in court later. That's
Also,
the biggest thing.
if you're young and you're thinking about, hey, I don't like the way my area is being policed,
Yep.
join the service, learn, be part of it, be part of the solution, be part of the program, be part of the change.
You remember Dallas when Dallas had the 5 cop shot?
Oh,
and,
Yeah.
by the sniper. About a week later, the Dallas police chief came out. I can't remember his name. He was a black dude, great guy.
He's been on Fox News multiple times.
He's no longer the chief anymore, but he said, "You don't like the way we're doing things? Okay,
Sign up.
join and make a difference that you want
Yeah.
to see." And that right there was the best thing I think I ever heard.
Yep.
Because it's like I work in a neighborhood that isn't represented by the way I look. So I treat everyone like a human being and I do my best. But if you don't like it, join your local police force and be the difference.
Mhm.
When I joined the military, I saw, hate to say it, but my reason was I saw a video about other countries saying they have mandatory service, and everyone was talking, yeah, that should be it. And I was like, yeah, everyone should serve. And I saw a video, I was like, God damn it, yes. All right, I'll go talk to a recruiter. Sure shit.
I didn't join until I was 20, and it literally became from a job. I was going to college and working full time, and I was sitting with a guy, and I thought, this is just stupid. I'm not living the life I'm supposed to live, but I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I tried to go to college, I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do, and he and I talked about going around recruiters, and we talked to different recruiters about different services, and it was really the Marine Corps recruiter that kind of bonded with us. And we joined on the buddy plan, and then he bailed on me. Fuck you, Brian, if you're listening.
Where's your battle buddy now?
Brian, if you're listening, I still fucking hate you for that. By the way, you talked me into that shit, and then you left.
Wait, you didn't sign the contract?
He went to MEPS with me. He talked me through the whole plan. He was like, listen, we'll do this on the buddy plan. We'll do this, and we'll do this. I'm like, yeah, man. We were really close friends. And then he bailed on me. He never showed up, and I kept looking around at boot camp. I was like, where's this guy?
You hold hands while they
Wait,
check
you
your
made the
butthole?
book?
I went all the way in, and I had a kid, got married, all that stuff, and I eventually found him years later, and I was like, hey, whatever happened? And they go, yeah, I backed out. I was like,
Is that when you look
Yeah,
at
no
those-
shit.
if I track you down, this is not going to be well for
Wait,
you.
you actually joined?
He's like, you were doing it? I was like, I hate you. I hate you so much. Yeah. So anyway, but I mean, yeah, it is one of those things where you go, what am I supposed to do with my life? I don't know. Let me see if I can find the answers. And for everybody, it's a different reason. A lot of folks that live in those areas that have trouble with crime all the time, it's like, man, the police are always blah, blah, blah. If you don't like it, join the police. Be part of that program. Be part of your community. Like, represent your community. Here's an opportunity. I mean, there's nothing that says that you have to keep going along with the status quo. You can be part of the solution.
Not just that, I mean, you could join a civilian police academy. You can learn what it is that we're doing, which makes you feel that way.
Yeah.
You know, you can say, I hate when they come up and they pull me over because I'm wearing a black hoodie and jeans and stuff. Well, you learn every single call we get, all right, everyone's wearing a black hoodie and jeans. And it's my due diligence to pull over everyone in that area.
They always pull me over because they
Wearing
have
a black
tinted
hoodie and
windows.
jeans.
And
You know,
rims.
it's like,
well,
we get a
okay.
description for it. It's
Yeah.
if you call on me and said, you know, the guy that just robbed my house was driving this car and he was going that way, I'm gonna pull every car in that direction.
Yeah.
And you'd be mad if I didn't do that, if it was your house, you know?
Like,
Yeah.
I don't know like where most of your audience is, but you can go on a ride along. Like, that's how I never wanted to be a cop. I wasn't like one day I wasn't like, hey, I want to be a policeman. Like
I never thought I'd join the military.
Right. Like, I was a paramedic and I made friends with a bunch of cops and where we work, and I was like, hey man, can I go on a ride along? Like, I just want to see what it's like from your guys' car. And I went on a ride along and I was like, wow, this is awesome. Like, this is high speed, something's always happening, it's never a slow day.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, I want to do it. So most places will let you go on a ride along. So if you want to do a ride along and see what it's really like, so you can go see how the radio sounds and everything is, the information that's given to you is never what you think you need.
Yeah.
Like, it's all, you get about 10% of what you're going to find out once you get there.
See, that's why I think a lot of people, they're always critical of what the cops do and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, okay, your bad day is, okay, I filed this paper in the wrong file. I misplaced
Yeah.
it. I missed this delivery and put it to the wrong address. You know, in a cop's life, you know, he's always going to be the guy that's getting yelled at, you know.
Just so you know, people don't call
Or
us
getting
when they're
shot at.
having a good day.
Exactly. When
Yeah.
they show up,
Yeah.
you know, they're going to be the bad guy when they get there regardless. I mean, the
Yeah.
people that they're going to see do not want them to be there.
Correct.
So they don't have a good day, per se, any day. You know,
Right.
when they're showing up, it's either going to be, they're going to get screamed and yelled at, or they're going to get shot at.
Yeah.
And your bad day is your boss may give you a cross look or, you know, yell at you for doing something wrong. So, but you're gonna go home. This police officer wakes up every morning and doesn't know if
Yeah.
he may not make it back to his house, so.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys. I appreciate you being on the podcast.
Yeah, hell of a podcast. Thank you. I had a great time.
Anytime, man.
We should have turned the fan on.
Listen, we can do this. I've learned to do this stuff through Zoom. So if you ever want to come back on again, just let Danny know or let me know, and we'll do this through Zoom. I mean,
if people listen to this and want us back on, we'll
listen.
figure it out.
The whole point is building community. That's the whole goal of the podcast. Is I want to build community between everybody to have a conversation going and allow people to have the conversation. That's the big thing.
Yeah.
Is our community is lacking in conversation, and I figured why not start it.
Dude, that's a
If anyone's
could've said it
ever
better.
anti-police and wants to talk, I think us two are, me and Ian are pretty good with that. We could let you know what we're feeling on those kind of things.
We're reasonable. I'll tell you when you're being silly, and I'll tell you when you're right. That is what it is.
So if anyone has ever have any questions, just let us know. 'Cause
Awesome. Appreciate you guys being on. Everybody out there listening, please remember to rate, review, subscribe, share with your friends, and as always, cue the cow. That's how we end it.
Is that you?
Yeah.
See?
Yeah, making all kinds of noises on the podcast, huh?
That wasn't me.
So I thought that was you doing that.
No.
All right.
So,
All right. Wow, I did not think that would go like that. That was some good conversations.
Oh, yeah.
Good times with that.
Out of beer.
oh, me too. I was like, I need to get a beer, but I want to still talk. You guys want a shirt? I got a shirt.
Yeah.
You got shirts?
What?
Yeah, I want a
I saw
shirt.
those back there.
What
I
size you
peeped
wear?
those when I first sat down. I didn't know if that was up to.
XL.
I'll take a large.
XL is, I think, the top one. No, the bottom right is XL. You're wearing a large?
A
The
large.
large, I think, is the top.
Large is the top.
You might have to pull it out. That's what she said.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
So what's